humanitarian zone of Al-Mawasi, and other family members are fighting for their lives in a barely functioning health system. Prime Minister, the crisis in Gaza is getting worse and not better. None of us in this chamber can end their nightmare, but we can do more. This government have rightly used every tool at their disposal: sanctions on arms and trade and officials against Putin's Russia. When will Israel be held to the same standards for genocide? When will this government confirm further sanctions, recognise the State of Palestine and offer some hope to beleaguered Gazans and many millions who are watching on in horror?
Prime Minister.
Can I start by saying I'm sorry to hear of the dreadful loss of the families of her constituents. There have been far too many examples like that. I was pleased to see that there's now a ceasefire in Lebanon. We desperately need that now in Gaza, something we've been pressing for some time. There's intense talks going on to that end at the moment, as she knows. That would provide the space for the hostages to be allowed out. They've been there for a very, very long time. Desperately needed aid to go in at speed and at scale, but also opens the potential for the pathway to the two-state solution, which I believe is the only peaceful way to resolve this ongoing conflict.
Katrina Murray.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My constituents in the east of Kirkintilly are experiencing a housing emergency. Not enough houses for families or for those fleeing domestic abuse, and what houses there are in drastic need of repair. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that the Scottish Government should be prioritising repairing this housing emergency, but also the funding of local authorities to address this crisis of their own making?
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm grateful to her for raising this, because in Scotland, house building has ground to a halt. Homelessness is at record numbers. Children in temporary accommodation, record numbers. And that this budget was the biggest settlement for Scotland since devolution. So they've got the powers, they've got the money. What they haven't got is any more excuses.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The people of Thornbury have been promised a new health facility for more than 20 years, but have seen every proposal fall by the wayside. That's why it was a great relief to residents when the Health Minister confirmed to me in writing that the funding to rebuild the centre would be made available. However, we are still months away from seeing the final plans signed off, never mind having spades in the ground. So what reassurances can the Prime Minister give me and my constituents that this isn't just another hollow promise, and that the proposals will be approved swiftly once they hit the Health Secretary's desk?
Well, I'm grateful to her for raising that, and it's obviously a cause of concern for her constituents. And we are determined to fix the broken NHS that we inherited from the party opposite. We've set out our targets in the plan for change last week. As she knows, the Department for Health, NHS England and the Local Care Board are working together to deliver for patients in her constituency. It is important, as she'll appreciate, that we go through the proper business case as part of this rebuild. But what I can make sure is she gets a meeting with the relevant minister to be updated on behalf of her constituents.
Peter Lamb.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Following years of real terms cuts to their funding, St Catherine's Hospice, serving my constituency of Crawley, has recently made a number of redundancies. Palliative care is hugely important to our communities, and I pay tribute to them for their work. Can the Prime Minister join me in thanking the work of St Catherine's and outline how the Government will look to support palliative care moving forwards?
Prime Minister.
I will join him in that and recognise the vital role that hospices play in providing support to people at the end of their life and understand the challenges that they face. Most hospices receive funding by providing NHS services, and funding will be set out in the usual way. Thank you.
Jerome Mayhew.
Mr Speaker, losing a farm is not like losing any other business. It can't come back. Now, those are the words of the Prime Minister, those that he said to the NFU in order to get their votes. So can the Prime Minister understand why farmers in Broadland and Falkland and around the country now think that his administration is duplicitous?
Mr Speaker, I think everybody welcomes the £5 billion over the next 2 years that we put in the budget to... Well, they shake their heads, I'm afraid they do. £350 million in the last week alone, compared with the £300 million underspent by the last government. On the threshold, as he well knows, in an ordinary family case, the threshold is £3 million, and that means the vast majority of farmers will be unaffected.
Joyce Dewbray.
14 years of the party opposite gutting local government. It's left councils My constituents were recently shocked when Cannock Chase District Council proposed the closure of the Museum of Cannock Chase and the Prince of Wales Theatre. Can the Prime Minister ask the Culture Minister to please, and his officials to please meet with me to see what can be done to save our museum and theatre?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, they groan at the question. The Leader of the Opposition was saying they're coming to terms with their failures. Well, they're obviously struggling just with it. I understand there's been a huge loss to his constituency. Councils across the country were at the front line of the last government's ruinous economic failure. We announced £4 billion in additional funding for local government, a real terms increase in core spending power. We will continue to do so, and I will make sure that he gets a meeting with the relevant minister.
Chris Law.
These last months have shown that cruel Westminster governments of whichever party continue to target the weakest in society, while the Scottish Government will continue to protect them. Whilst the Labour Party have voted to continue the two-child benefit cap from the Conservatives, the SNP are abolishing it. While the Prime Minister picks the pockets of pensioners of their winter fuel allowance, Scotland's First Minister, John Swinney, has reinstated it. So, Mr. Speaker, given support for Labour is plummeting and support for Scottish independence is once again leading in the polls, who does the Prime Minister believe makes the best decisions for Scotland?
Prime Minister.
Those that were elected in a general election on the 4th of July, they're sitting here.
In centuries past, the three rivers that converge on the centre of Carlisle have made the city highly defendable against invading armies. However, in 1985, 2005 and 2015, those same rivers overpowered the city, leaving thousands devastated by flooding. What assurances can the Prime Minister give my constituents that the flood defences that the Conservatives promised but failed to deliver will be completed under this government?
Can I start by wishing her a happy birthday? She raises a really important matter for her constituents who faced appalling flooding too many times, and the last government left our defences in a state of absolute disrepair. Mr. Speaker, we're investing £2.4 million this year, and the Environment Agency are currently studying options to improve protection in Carlisle. I'll make sure she gets a meeting to discuss the specific options.
Becca Paul.
Mr. Speaker, in recent weeks, the former head of MI6, Sir Richard Dearlove, has warned that conflict between Russia and the West is no longer coming, it has already come. With Russia poised to spend more than 6% of its GDP on its military next year, the time for reviews and roadmaps is over. Will the Prime Minister recognise the urgency of the situation and commit to spending at least 2.5% of GDP on defence without further delay?
Well, Mr. Speaker, she's right about the importance of national security, particularly at the moment. At the budget, we delivered £2.9 billion increase in the MOD budget. We're pleased to deliver the largest pay rise for our armed forces in 22 years, and we'll set out the path to 2.5 in due course. That target, of course, was last met under the last Labour government. It wasn't met once in the 40 years that they were in power.
Right, McNally.
Mr. Speaker, in October 2023, my constituent Mark Somerville received the shattering news that at 43 he had motor neuron disease. Since then, he has set up the Mark Somerville Foundation and is doing incredible work to raise awareness of the condition. Mark is in the gallery today and will speak to MPs later about living with MND. Will my right honourable friend join me in recognising the work of Mark and his foundation and commit the government to doing all it possibly can to support efforts to find a cure for this devastating disease?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for raising this case. He mentioned it to me last night, and I do pay tribute to Mark, who's in the gallery, and the work of his foundation. This diagnosis can so obviously be absolutely devastating, and it's testament, if I may say so, to his bravery and compassion that he is raising awareness of the condition. I think many of us would question whether we're capable of doing what he's doing, given the diagnosis that he's had. Last week, of course, Mr. Speaker, I paid tribute to the inspirational Kevin Sinfield, another incredible champion. And I say to both of them, all those campaigning, we stand with you in this fight.
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Ryan Cornelius has been detained in Dubai for 17 years. His property was seized in what is a very unjudicial process. The Prime Minister has been to UAE. I want to ask the Prime Minister whether, when he went there, did he now demand that Ryan Cornelius was freed, given that the United Nations came to the conclusion that his detention was arbitrary and in violation of international law, and following that, would he now make Magnitsky sanctions deliverable on those who are responsible for this after he is released?
Prime Minister.
This is an important case, and of course it's been raised by the government a number of times, including by the Foreign Secretary as part of the trip that I was on. I myself raised human rights issues, but it is a serious case. We'll continue to press for the outcome that I know he and his family desperately want.
Sarah Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Stellantis could not have asked for more from the workers at the Luton plant. Like every generation of Vauxhall worker in Luton, they meet every target set. They make every innovation demanded of them. They never give up. Contrast this with Carlos Tavares, the CEO, who days after making the decision to threaten over 1,000 jobs in Luton, quit. Does the Prime Minister agree that in light of this sudden departure of the CEO, Stellantis should review this decision? Do what's right by our town, stay put for good, or until an alternative is found to ensure Luton's manufacturing history is also our future?
Prime Minister.
I thank you for raising it, which is it's obviously an issue of grave concern to her constituents, and the government is totally committed to supporting the workers and their families at this uncertain time, and the Industry Minister will meet the company this week to discuss plans for workers and the site to ensure that dedicated support is in place. We'll continue to do so because I know it's an issue of considerable concern to her constituents.
Joshua Reynolds.
Ben and Henry, otherwise known as the Ocean Oarsmen, will be rowing across the Atlantic next year for Alexander Devine Children's Hospice in Maidenhead, with a target of raising £50,000. This hospice, Thames Hospice and many others, though, are struggling with rising costs and the planned increase in employers' national insurance. So will the Prime Minister join with me in wishing Ben and Henry the best of luck on their journey and take this opportunity to scrap the NI rise for hospices?
Well, can I pay tribute to Ben and Henry and everybody supporting their campaign. It's obviously an important issue. The funding arrangements will be set out in due course.
For retail workers in Bolton North East, the busy Christmas season is overshadowed by shoplifting, which Usdall's latest survey identifies as the leading trigger of abuse, threats and assaults. As the police drop in Bromley Cross, officers welcome this government's commitment to clamping down on low-level shoplifting and prosecuting repeat offenders. What more can the government do to tackle shoplifting and support retail workers and businesses during their critical holiday season?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank you for raising this, and I've spoken to many who work in our shops who are very, very concerned about shoplifting, and because of the approach that was taken by the previous government, it went out of control. We are bringing it under control. It's not low level, it has a huge impact on other customers, has a particular impact on staff working in supermarkets, and that's why we are dedicating funding to training police and retailers and supporting specialist analyst teams to crack down on the gangs that are targeting retailers.
Paul Holmes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In the last few weeks of the last government, we awarded millions of pounds to remote train stations like Hedge End and Swanwick in my constituency under the Accessibility for All scheme. In the first 2 weeks of this government, that was scrapped. Will the Prime Minister use his good offices to give my constituents and stations across this country an early Christmas present and give us our money back, please?
Prime Minister.
I'm grateful for him. This is an important issue for his constituents. The problem is the last government made lots and lots of promises, but they never set aside the money to pay for them. That's why we picked up a £22 billion black hole. They made promises in relation to infected blood, promises in relation to Horizon. They didn't put aside the money to pay for it. We've had to inherit that, to clean it up. We will get on with delivery, but we had to balance the books and stabilise the economy first.
Lizzie Collins.
Mr Speaker, this past weekend, one of my market towns, Kirkby Lonsdale, suffered a devastating fire, resulting in the loss of a local man's life. The whole town centre was closed and many local businesses have been affected. Sunday was meant to be a day of celebration with Christmas markets, family games and community events, and instead the town faced a tragedy. Can the Prime Minister tell me how the government can support communities like Kirkby Lonsdale to rebuild and recover after tragedies such as this?
Prime Minister.
I'm grateful to her for raising this awful situation, and I think all of us can only imagine the impact that this must have had on the town, on the families and the friends of the victims of this awful tragedy. And I commend the community, which has come together in an extraordinary way in the aftermath of this awful event. I'll make sure she has a meeting with the relevant minister to discuss how the government can support her community at this vital time.
Final question, Ellie Chance.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This week I was contacted by my constituent Sally. She's a GP and she'd called 999 on Monday for a critically ill patient to try to get an ambulance, but couldn't because they were all stuck outside Hereford A&E waiting to unload their patients. At the same time, we know that across the country, medically fit patients are unable to be discharged because of the social care crisis. So can I ask the Prime Minister, what is he doing to fix social care, to fix patient flow through hospitals, so that ambulances can get back to saving lives?
Well, I'm grateful to her for raising this case, and it's awful, an example that is all too common because of the fact that the last government broke the NHS. And she'll have seen the Lord Darcy report that we published on the state of the... They should be utterly ashamed of themselves in relation to what they did to our NHS. But she raises a really important point. That's why we put a record amount into the NHS in the budget, £25 billion. We've set out in our priorities what we need to do with the NHS. We'll work at pace on this as hard as we possibly can. She's right to raise it. They should hang their heads in shame.
That completes Prime Minister's questions.
That was Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer taking questions from MPs in the House of Commons. You're seeing on screen there the farmers' protest outside this studio on Whitehall there, a live shot there. We're still joined here in the studio at GBNews with Labour MP Dover and Deal Mike Tapp and Shadow Policing and Illegal Immigration Minister Matt Vickers.
You've been sending in some great questions to us at gbnews.com/yoursay. This programme is different. It's all about your questions, not ours. And without further ado, we'll go to our Conservative representative, Matt Vickers, and we will bring you a question from Peter from Coventry. Why don't the Conservatives, of which you do speak for, Lib Dems and Reform, which you don't, say to the farmers, we will repeal Labour's tax grab, which you have, and will return the tax taken? So the argument is that this will come in 2026. You are on record as saying you will reverse it, but actually Peter says they'd like the money back that they have paid. Is that something you could contemplate?
Do you know what? We're committed to repealing it. We won't allow it to go on. We've seen the horrors. Do you know, I go to a surgery, I meet farmers whose grandparents have been farming on these farms for generations. They know they're not going to hand the same opportunities down to their children. We also know it's going to have an impact on food security. We know that it's going to have an impact on food prices. There's parts of my constituency that are about to be covered in solar farms. This all adds to that mix. It adds to what our countryside's going to look like going forwards. We're committed to repealing it. I think we'll have to see what state the economy is in before we start deciding what we're going to give back, because things aren't looking like they're going the right way at the moment. We're seeing growth revised down. We're seeing unemployment, like every Labour government before, unemployment's going to go through the roof. There's going to be real consequences not to tidying up.
It's an interesting set of priorities because you've made two pledges already. One to reverse private school fees, one to repeal the inheritance taxes on farmers. It's interesting that you've made those two choices. I mean, you could say we'd like to spend more on the NHS or on schools or on pay for police officers. But why are those two the most egregious things, or why are they the most important things as far as the Conservative Party?
There are lots of people
7% of people go to private school?
There are lots of people losing out in lots of ways as a result of this budget, whether it be all those small businesses and the NICs, well, the big businesses as well, and all the jobs that are going to be lost as a result of these NICs increases. But actually, those two things are policies that are about they're divisive policies. They're policies of well, the politics of envy about picking certain crowds out, and it's just unjust what's happening to farmers. It's just unjust what's happening. Well, unjust what's happening to pensions as well. But there are two crowds who are missed out, and it's a no-brainer.
Actually,
when you look at what's happening,
pensioners, are you committed to reversing?
We are completely opposed to the policy.
And you'll reverse, would you, the issue of the winter fuel allowance? You'll restore it, will you, to pensioners?
We are.
Will you restore
We're
it?
completely opposed to the policy.
Will you restore it?
You'll have to ask the boss.
Well, you're the party's person on the panel. Will you restore the winter fuel payment to those pensioners? Yes or no?
I couldn't tell you that we would.
The answer is you haven't said yet. You're opposing without solutions. You're as bad as that lot. That's the problem.
We brought forward the triple lock. We're about to bring forward the triple lock plus, which would have meant that the state pension was never hit by tax. Pensioners now aren't getting that protection on tax. They're having the winter fuel grabbed from their hands.
Winter fuel payment, and Mike Vickers, you won't say you'll restore it. You're making choices in government. We're looking still at screens here of the protest on Whitehall. It looks now gridlocked. There are large police presence. It looks like up near the Cenotaph.
No farmers, no food is the strap line that you can see on that particular...
You're making choices here which are threatening these farmers' livelihoods, maybe food security. You know, are you on the right side of this in Labour?
The Conservatives have become... essentially a party of protest. There's no policy there. It's just we wouldn't do that. They want all the benefits from the Labour budget, but they've got absolutely no policy to say how they would raise those funds.
You've got a leader been there for six weeks. You've been there for 6 months.
There's zero leadership at all. They're a party of protest. Now, we've put into policy some really big commitments to rebuild the NHS, our schools, to secure the borders, to get more police on the streets, to get our trains moving again so that our economy can grow. Now, these are tough decisions, but that's because we've inherited a mess because the last 14 years of Conservative government has left us in that state. So these are difficult positions, but we're making difficult choices, and the Conservatives have got no answers.
Another viewer here says, impossible to understand why Kemi Badenoch, or the PM, didn't mention the farmers. Now, Kemi Badenoch has a choice there. She has 6 questions of the Prime Minister. She didn't mention the farmers. Look again at the screens now. We're seeing there live fury from farmers, very, very upset. Are MPs, are the Tory party out of touch with that view? Why didn't Kemi Badenoch have a go at the PM about this issue on the farmers' inheritance tax?
PMQs is 30 minutes every week. It's 6 questions. We've had many, many debates in Parliament. We'll continue having many, many debates in Parliament. There's a big argument going on out there. We're making a hell of a lot of noise about it because we know the consequences for those small family farms. We know the consequences for food security.
Or is it because 12,000 farms closed under Conservatives, so she knows that there's no point in bringing it up because she'll be absolutely destroyed?
We will be bringing it up. We will be bringing it up. We'll be bringing it up because, I mean, the figures that the Treasury brought forward are completely out of kilter with what the NFU are saying, with what everybody else would say on it and is realistic about it. This has huge consequences for those family farms.
So, look, the important thing is here that we know it's a difficult decision to make, but it's the large estates and the large farms that are going to carry that burden. The smaller farms won't be closing here, and we're investing £5 billion
£1 million
into
is not a lot of money
farming.
in terms of the capital. These people don't have liquid assets. They have an asset that they need to use to farm. You are going to kill these farms.
So we're investing £5 billion into sustainable farming. At the same time, we're ensuring that prisons...
imposing a tax on fertiliser as well.
Military bases and that the NHS are buying 50% of their food from British farmers. The Conservatives struck the New Zealand-Australia deal, which completely undercut British farmers, which is why 12,000 closed. So we're actually standing up for farmers, and there are some difficult decisions to make.
No farmer will agree with you.
Shall we go on to... There was a very good exchange, by the way. Thank you. Let us bring you Nicholas's question. Nicholas, we love you very much for getting in touch. We'd love to know where you're from next time. So, obviously, Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, decided to talk about immigration. That was her main focus today. This is what Nicholas says, and I put this to Labour's Mike Tapp first. I'm just watching coverage of the debate about immigration. What a load of rubbish. One party blaming another in the most childish way. No wonder nothing gets done about this important issue. And it doesn't end with this issue, but many important problems. Just tit for tat, one party blaming the other, no one getting any solutions, Mike Tapp.
He's right. No, we're 5 months into this government. We inherited open borders. 300 crossed in 2018, 140,000 plus since on the Conservative watch. We had record backlogs in the Home Office. So we've come into government and we know we need sensible solutions.
And you've actually Rwanda plan and numbers are up 20%. That's what happened.
So the Rwanda plan was not a deterrent. The 4 went voluntarily. It would have taken 99 years to deport all that crossed in that way. Instead, we've put into place the Border Security Command. That brings in the likes of MI5. Now, I've worked in counter-terrorism, but also against criminal gangs. I know the difference that those extra counter-terror powers will make. But at the same time, we're striking those international deals with Iraq, Germany, and other European partners. And what we're doing within the Home Office is the day job, which was completely neglected. So those asylum interviews are up from 2,000 to 10,000. We've deported 9,400, including foreign criminals. The whole system had ground to a halt under the Conservatives. We've got it moving again. That will eventually bring down the costs in hotel accommodation. And also we're going to be securing the borders and stopping the crossings through our work with the Border Security Command. So this is sensible solutions.
That's illegal migration, net migration you haven't mentioned, and both those two areas were not in this relaunch of the government last Thursday.
Well, they were.
It's a foundational idea of reducing them, but no actual numbers.
No,
Whitehall wants targets, you haven't given them one, you don't care about it.
They were in there because I took it from what Keir said as they are top priorities, because what he said was without national security efforts and secure borders, we can't achieve the other goals. So that makes it top priority in securing the borders.
OK, Conservatives, Matt Vickers. Are you embarrassed about the Conservative government's record?
I think, well, we saw Kemi, about a week, a fortnight ago, concede that consecutive governments from both sides have let the country down on immigration. But actually, there was progress being made. We'd put that deterrent in place. On the 24th of July, we would have seen those flights start taking off. The National Crime Agency said the only way you can deal with this is have a reason for people who arrive in this country to know that they're not going to get to stay. If you think you can arrive here and you're going to get to stay and everything that has to come with it, you're going to try.
But if you can stop them doing that. They say you didn't clear the
What's happened since the election? What's happened since the election?
4 deportations or 9,400.
What's happened since the election is the number of people being returned who arrived in small boats has actually gone down. There are less people being returned who are arriving in small boats than there was. The number of people coming is up 23%. We were closing hotels. We're now opening more hotels in communities across the country. I've been out there. I've seen what that means for people. But there's no surprise, because the guy who was in charge talked about all immigration controls being racist. He opposed every measure brought forward to toughen up our immigration system. As we heard there, he opposed the deportation of foreign criminals who are now in this country committing more crimes.
That's up. Let's look at the facts. That's up 19%, and he put terrorists in prison. That's the fact.
But might happen, Matt, because when I look at the gates of Downing Street where the protesters are there, that's Whitehall. Looking back, you'll see a big police presence. This, to me, shows upset concern by an upset group of people, farmers in this case. Arnie from Sunderland emails in, Reform UK are on the up. Reform are benefiting, I think, from this upset with both the main parties, whether it's on immigration or elsewhere. Should you be worried? We're talking the day after we've seen this billionaire property tycoon, Nick Candy, pledge £1 million to Reform UK, £3 million more pledged with that. Nigel Farage is talking to the world's richest man about donating. You know, money is flowing towards a challenger party. Should you be worried in Labour?
I'm a true patriot. I've served my country. I've been to war 3 times for this country. I've spent my whole career in service. And I mean it when I say that. There's many politicians who wrap themselves up in the flag but would do no favours to what we need in this country. No one's taking away your service, Mark. Now, what I'll say on reform is I respect our democracy. That's what I've fought for in Iraq and Afghanistan and in my counter-terror work. So, look, if there's another party that's doing well out of that, then I will not criticise that. Instead, it's about listening to voters, which is exactly what Keir Starmer's doing. And that's why we're fixing the country for hard-working people and working to secure the borders.
I think, in answer to Annie's question, you are a bit worried about reform.
I've made it really clear that I'm not worried about any party. I respect democracy, and it's why we've got to respond to what voters want.
Yeah.
That was very magnanimous, wasn't it? Come on, reform. It's wonderful to have you on the playing field. Matt Vickers from the Conservatives.
Do you know what? The electorate sent us a message. We've got to go away, dust ourselves down, come back with a better offer, listen to what we're being told by the electorate. We will not win just on the back of what Labour are doing to the country. We've got to give a better offer. We've got to take something forward that captures people's imagination. But There's a lot of people out there very worried about what this Labour government's going to do, whether that be the pensioners, whether that be the farmers, whether that be the people who are trying to create jobs for people who've seen the consequences of 6 months of Labour. We've got to come back with a better offer. We've got to look at what the British people want from us and take that to the electorate.
Will it be Kemi at the next election? You're still infighting, I think. You're where we were in 2019, and you're still facing inwards. We faced outwards, which is why we won the election.
It will be Kemi. She will be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. She's feisty, she's fiery, she's saying what people want to hear, and she's out there engaging with the people.
Can I ask one? Do you both worry, as the most likely party in government, the one most likely to form a new government if Labour lose, that it's just really hard governing, and you've got Reform UK with easy solutions. They have a one-in, one-out policy on net migration, which most people would think is impossible to enforce because of the demands in all sorts of sectors. They have easy solutions to difficult problems, and it's your, as a group of MPs and politicians, to convince people how hard it can be to get to the right outcome.
And it is tough in government. Delivery isn't easy, and this is one of the reasons that we're trying to clean up efficiency within departments in the civil service. It's really important to do that so we can get our policies through that make that impact. Smaller parties say a lot which are undeliverable.
But isn't it interesting, Matt Vickers, and shouldn't we recognise that actually Nigel Farage saying, do you know what, those two are rubbish, they've let you down, it actually gets you quite a long way in politics, which is concerning.
It's much easier to say things than it is to do them. That's just a fact, isn't it? You know, you can say all you want, and actually he filled a void. The reason people went out there and voted for them this time, or failed to turn up and vote for us...
Do you think he can be Prime Minister? Can you see it?
Do what, sorry?
Can you see Farage as Prime Minister? Can you see that?
I don't see it. Do you know what I think could happen? I think what happened last time, the reason Labour are in there with their biggest of majorities, completely beyond scrutiny with this huge majority, doing what they want to pensioners, farmers, etc., is because people chose to vote Reform. You know, lots of those people peed off with the system, decided, actually, that's why. They're in there with 5 MPs. They can't really change things. Labour have a massive majority. It makes it very difficult for us to scrutinise them. Actually, that Reform vote just gifted Labour and all the consequences that come with it.
OK, I want to ask you a question from Molly. Great question, Molly. Tell us where you're from next time. Big report out today from the Women and Equalities Committee. And Molly shares her experience. It's made the front page of the Daily Mail today, basically saying our NHS does not listen. There are too many examples of the NHS not listening to women and women suffering as a result. Molly's experience is this. I suffered from undiagnosed endometriosis for years. No doctor would send me for tests. It was only when I saw a woman GP I got tests and a hysterectomy. It's changed my life. The pain ended. I was white with pain every month and no one would listen. Molly, I share some of your experiences and have done in the past, and it is miserable. Thank you very much indeed for your question. Is our NHS sexist, Conservatives, Matt Vickers?
Well, I would hope not. I mean, that's a horrendous story, and you hear stories
it's commonplace.
like this.
You hear them all the time.
You hear stories like this in surgeries of people who had the most awful experiences in
MP surgeries.
MP surgeries, yeah.
All right, OK, good. I thought you mentioned...
I know what you meant.
I hear these horrendous stories from people who've had the most awful times and haven't got what they needed from the NHS. The NHS is a wonderful thing. It provides incredible healthcare to lots of people and helps people get what they need, but sometimes there are places where it goes wrong, and it's on people like us, MPs, to get around the table to engage with the NHS and those providers to make sure that people get the service that they need.
There's a challenge for the Labour Party. We've got one here from Gary. Gary says if the NHS is broken, it's not because of lack of funding, it's down to poor management. And do you worry the £22 billion you're tipping into the NHS will get wasted by poor managers?
Well, firstly, on Molly's story, I do want to say that I sympathise and thank her for raising this, and I'm sure Wes Streeting and his team will be looking into the specifics of that. On the wider point around that as well, and the NHS, I think that investment's really important, and you know, the 40,000 extra appointments a week will help people like Molly, including speeding up diagnosis times and treatment within 18 weeks. These are really important targets, but there is a point on efficiency as well, and I know from the Darcy report that Wes Streeting is addressing those points as well.
OK.
Thank you very much indeed, both of you, for your company and your wisdom.
That's right.
And your respectful debate.
Mike Vickers, great to have you here. We're still on the shots there of Whitehall, where farmers are protesting. But coming up is Good Afternoon Britain with Cameron and Emily. What's in your show?
Well, thank you very much. Yes, we've had Beverly Turner down at the tractor farmer protest in Westminster. Now we've got Patrick Christys. He's going to be interviewing farmers and finding out exactly what they're so angry about. We're going to be there live for you.
Yeah, and this all comes as the NFU president, Tom Bradshaw, has been reduced to tears over this issue. Elsewhere, a GB News exclusive for you coming up. Are white British students being discriminated against when applying for jobs?
Yes, it's quite shocking, actually, what some of the claims are there. And also, would you be happy if your child was told by their school to fast, to go without food for a whole day for Gaza? That's what's happened in one school in Tower Hamlets, and we'll be speaking to the person who broke that story.
Yeah, all coming up at 1 o'clock.
And we'll all be watching or listening. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Cameron. That's all from us, isn't it?
That's right, a thrilling show. That's all from here. Stay tuned with GB News for all the coverage on the farmers' protest and that great show with Cameron and Emily.
I'll see you next week.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's another dry but rather cloudy day for many of us. Brightest skies will be in the north with some decent sunshine for parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland, although here some lingering fog into the afternoon because that's where this centre of high pressure remains, and we've got light winds and actually relatively cold conditions throughout. Some frost remaining into the afternoon as well as those lingering fog patches. Otherwise, it's sunny skies for much of Scotland, cloudier for England, Wales, and a bit more cloud for Northern Ireland compared with the last few days, where we've got the cloud 6 to 8 Celsius. Where we've got the lingering fog, temperatures could remain below freezing throughout the day, and then that fog tending to thicken once again overnight. But for much of England and Wales, it's a fine afternoon, albeit rather cloudy. There'll be some light showers coming into the south coast, otherwise dry for the vast majority. A few sunny spells appearing into North Wales and staying clear here into the evening and overnight, but the clearest skies will be once again across much of Scotland, hence the relatively low temperatures as the sun goes down. So frost and fog for much of Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well as northwest England and North Wales, but a lot of cloud, and there'll be increasing areas of cloud into the north and east of Scotland, the south of Scotland as well. Northern Ireland, much of England and Wales seeing the cloud lower overnight, and some drizzly rain will arrive into the east coast as the night progresses. So a chilly start to the day, but the coldest weather will be in the far north, where we've got clear skies overnight and some fog patches first thing. Otherwise, a lot of cloud and increasingly damp weather moving into the east of England and then pushing into the Midlands, central southern England, East Wales, and eventually northern England. Outbreaks of showery light rain, 8 to 10 Celsius in the south.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting a call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
The way in which children are being driven online because we're not taking them seriously offline. And what we're tending to do is seeing the problems entirely on the social media forgetting the fact that we've given up on children being able to work independently and play independently outdoors. We've basically created a world where the digital bedroom has become this go-to area for a lot of young kids. We've given up on old-fashioned parenting, where we try to cultivate their resilience. And now we blame everything, all the problems that occur online. You have to remember that if you take something like bullying, bullying doesn't have to only take place online. It happens all the time, offline, in everyday life. But yet we only see the problem on the social media. And there's this obsession with the social media where every single problem that afflicts childhood is blamed on it. And that distracts us from actually understanding what we're doing wrong with children. So for me, and I hate when I see children with digital technology, when I see them with smartphones. I'm not a fan. I'm much more concerned about the fact that parents use their digital phones when they're having dinner with their kids and giving very bad examples in relation to that. But the real problem, it seems to me, is offline, and that's why we've got to crack the issue. So for me, the banning issue is entirely a headline-grabbing political gambit. And I think that we should be much more focused on the real problems rather than delude ourselves that anything will improve.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Wednesday, the 11th of December. I'm Emily Carver.
And I am Cameron Walker.
Well, it's all eyes on Westminster as the tractors descend on the capital. There you go. Pressure is mounting on Keir Starmer to backtrack on his family farm tax raid. But is his government listening?
Yes, I am here at the farmers' protest in Whitehall as the farmers are starting to rev their engines. This is iconic. They're all about to descend and move in convoy right down past the House of Commons. Their message is loud and clear. Keir Starmer, you are a farmer harmer, and stop biting the hand that feeds you.
Patrick and his element there. Are white British students being discriminated against? Recent graduates claim they feel alienated as employers favour diversity targets over meritocracy.
Yes, indeed. And fasting for Gaza. A secondary school where more than half of pupils are eligible for free school meals has actually asked children to fast for Gaza. Now, let me tell you, some parents are furious. OK, well, it's all kicking off down at Westminster, isn't it? Now, I remember at the previous protest, the NFU said, leave the tractors at home. You know, today is not the day for tractors. We want to get through to the government without bringing down our, our tractors. But no, today is the day.
Well, Whitehall absolutely has come to a standstill. Tractors, you can't see the road because there are so many tractors. You saw a little bit with Patrick Christie's there just in the intro, and we will be live with him throughout the programme. But I think emotions, Emily, are really, really running high here. We had the NFU president, Tom Bradshaw, speaking to the Environment Committee this morning in the Houses of Parliament, and he was reduced to absolute tears. And you can see the amounts of tractors here. These are live pictures from central London. I think that's Parliament Square, isn't it? Just outside.
It is indeed, yes, straight outside the Houses of Parliament. This is where people go to protest, and the tractors are doing the same. The farmers are doing the same. Yes, we're going to be following what's going on with this protest. The question of the day really is, will the Labour Party, will the Labour government decide to U-turn on this deeply unpopular policy? We are going to be getting different views on the policy, on this inheritance tax rate, on this family farm tax rate. We are going to be hearing from Patrick, who I'm sure will be speaking to a number of farmers who've descended on the capital from all over the country. But please do get your thoughts in, gbnews.com/your say. But it is over to Sophia for the headlines.
Emily, Cameron, thank you. It's just gone 1 o'clock. These are your headlines. Hundreds of farmers have descended on Westminster with their tractors today as the government insists its support for the sector is steadfast. Last month, over 13,000 people rallied against the changes to inheritance tax. But despite the protests, the government says they will not change course on the policy. Today, farmers are warning the proposed changes could kill British farming.
This is the death of farming that's going to happen under this government. So we want to mark that, but once we get to Parliament, you give them what for. We're here to make a noise. This is a war we will win, and the government will do a U-turn. That is determined by all of us to push that.
Meanwhile, inside the Commons, Sir Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch clashed over immigration at Prime Minister's questions today. The opposition leader criticised the Prime Minister's record on immigration, but the Prime Minister hit back by accusing the Tories of losing control of the borders.
I'm glad she now wants to talk about immigration. Last week she said she didn't, and for good reason, because the previous government presided over record high levels of immigration. The figures just a few weeks ago, nearly 1 million on net migration. That is unprecedented. A one-nation experiment in open borders under the last government. And she was the champion. She stood up and praised the then Tory Home Secretary for listening to her on removing caps on migration visas. So she was applauding it. Now she's furious about what she was campaigning for. We will drive it down. We will drive down lawful migration. We'll drive down illegal migration.
Meanwhile, opposition leader Kemi Badenoch responded by questioning the Prime Minister over his past record.
He talks about open borders. He was the one campaigning for free movement. Yeah. I was in this house asking for a lift on skilled migration. He was there supporting all of the people who should not have been in this country. Yeah. He wanted us to relax immigration. 4 years ago, the Prime Minister signed a letter demanding that foreign criminals be allowed to stay in Britain. Dozens of Labour and Liberal Democrat MPs repeatedly signed these letters insisting that rapists and murderers be allowed to stay here. Will he apologise for signing these letters?
In other news, the government is pledging to build 4 new prisons within 7 years in a bid to get a grip on the overcrowding crisis. £2.3 billion will go towards 14,000 new prison places by 2031 as part of the Justice Secretary's decade-long prison capacity strategy. It comes as overcrowding has recently led to the early release of some prisoners, with Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood blaming the last government for leaving our prisons in crisis. Meanwhile, Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick told GBNews this morning that Labour are not dealing with the heart of the problem.
Despite all the fanfare in Labour's announcement today, there is not any money for new prisons. The Labour Party are admitting that there's going to be a massive shortfall in prison places in the years ahead, and they're not dealing with the heart of this problem.
And some breaking news. An 18-year-old man has been sentenced to 1 year in a Dubai jail for having a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old girl. That's according to a campaign group. Marcus Fakana from Tottenham was with his parents in Dubai in August when a holiday romance blossomed with another Londoner who has since turned 18. After returning home and seeing pictures and chats, the girl's mother reported the relationship to Dubai police, who then arrested Fakana at his hotel. Sex with another person aged under 18 is illegal in Dubai. And a new report has found women are suffering in silence as painful gynecological conditions are being dismissed by doctors. The report says that medical misogyny means that the NHS fails to prioritise women's health, meaning there is a lack of research, treatment and specialists. This means women are left to suck it up and endure pain for years before getting a diagnosis. And MPs are warning it's damaging women's fertility and affecting their ability to get pregnant and have children. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Emily and Cameron.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 7 minutes past 1 now. Furious farmers have descended on Whitehall. Protests are continuing over these changes to inheritance tax.
Yeah, this comes following numerous UK-wide rallies over the last few weeks, including over 20,000 farmers in central London protesting last month.
Yes, but this time they've brought their tractors. Now, over in the House of Commons, the NFU president, Tom Bradshaw, that's the National Farmers Union, he was just reduced to tears.
It's not money. This is a lifetime of work. It's the heritage. and the custodianship of that farm.
Gosh, emotions really running high there, understandably, as you can possibly imagine. And is the government listening? That's what farmers are certainly asking this morning. And hopefully we can be joined by GB News presenter Patrick Christys, who is on the ground in Whitehall for us. Patrick, what is the feeling amongst farmers there this afternoon?
Well, it's an absolutely amazing atmosphere here, and excuse me because it is very loud. The farmers, just to tell you exactly what's going on now, have started moving in convoy down Whitehall. They have just started tooting their horns and moving their tractors. Starmer the farmer harmer is a message there. No farmers, no food. And there are several different messages here. Don't bite the hand that feeds you is one of them. Stop giving away money to foreign farmers in foreign aid when you have farmers here that are in trouble. And they're also very, very, very sceptical about what it means for the future of the British countryside. And I'm going to introduce Mo Metcalfe-Fisher now, who is a spokesperson for the Countryside Alliance. And Mo, as we look around and see these tractors rolling down Whitehall, what an iconic sight this is.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's a real shame actually it's had to come to this, that farmers are having to take lots of time out of their busy schedules producing food for us to come here and make their voices heard. And my gosh, what a loud noise they're making, but it's fantastic. But let's just hope that Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer are listening, because farmers are very upset, very angry.
Yeah, indeed. And this is life and death for. Let's have a look at this here now. What's this? No Food UK. It's Starmer. I mean, there's an individual here. Farm for sale. Here, look at this. Rest in peace, Rookery Farms. Cause of death. Keir Starmer is one of the signs here. And if we come this way, look, there's tractors here that are decked out in all sorts of lights. No farmers, no food, no future. Here we go. And if we turn this around now, this tractor's got the Union Jacks, it's got colourful lights on display, and back British farming. And just in case you're not familiar with your London geography, what they're going to be doing is rolling down this road here so they can get all the way through to the House of Commons there, where they've just had Prime Minister's questions, and what they are desperately hoping is that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves actually listen to them. And just come here, Mo, just as we see the sign here about Starmer the farmer harmer, do they feel a sense of betrayal by this Labour government?
Well, there is. I mean, look, the NFU have said betrayal. That's an extremely strong word for the NFU to use. They don't use words like that lightly. There's a real sense of upset and hurt, a sense that, you know, coming into the general election, that lots of promises were made, lots of good moves were made, and now they're in government, that there's a real change. But what the Treasury needs to do is get these people, get the rural experts round the table to rethink this policy.
Okay. Now what I'm going to try and do just quickly is I'm going to see if I can have a quick chat with this guy. Sir, can I talk to you? Can I talk to you? Can I talk to you? Come here. Can we get in? Let's see, there we go. Right, okay, sir. Why are you here today?
We've had enough. We've got a farm at home. They just muck us about all the time. Generations have looked after the farm, and they're going to ruin it. It's gone downhill for the last few years, and they just don't care about us.
What's your message to Keir Starmer?
Backtrack. You've got to change it. You've got to change it back. Come out to the farms. Realise what we do every day. It's just not fair. You just don't get it. It's so much disconnect.
Look, strong feeling here. Now, I can't hear you very well in the studio for understandable reasons, so I'm going to throw it back to you, and I hope to see from you soon.
Thank you. We really got a great view of what exactly is going on there, what the atmosphere is like. Patrick, thank you very much indeed. We'll be catching up with you very shortly as well to see what's going on. But joining us now in the studio is the former Minister for Nature and the Environment, Rebecca Powell. Rebecca, delighted to have you in the studio. What's your view when you see those pictures there? Now, you say that you used to work for the National Farmers Union. Is this the biggest protest that you've seen for a good while?
Well, I think you've got to look at what's behind this, what actually
entices a farmer to get on his tractor and come all the way to London? This is an enormous undertaking, and lots of them work alone, or there are only 2 of them on the farm. And so to leave your farm and to come all the way to London to do this, you know, a huge amount of emotion is behind this. They would not have come, and you can see the NFU president there, how emotional he was, and I think that just about sums it up. This is about more, I think, than just something to do with inheritance tax. This is all about the fabric of our rural communities and our rural society. So yes, it is about food security. It is about farmers being custodians of the land and looking after the nature. But it's, I think, about much more than that. It's about the fact that they really feel they're not being listened to, and they're not really, I think, being accepted enough and being understood enough for what they actually deliver for our nation.
And do you think the government is taking note of this protest in particular? You say emotions are running high, they clearly are, but government spokesperson, the Prime Minister's spokesperson only this morning saying we're not going to change our mind on this inheritance tax.
Well, I mean, this is the second big protest, isn't it? And it wouldn't surprise me at all if more protests or more ways of getting this on the radar will come to light, and the farmers will actually do something about it. I mean, I'm here partly because I come from 5 generations of my husband was a 7th generation agricultural auctioneer, and my own family are an exact example of these small family mixed farms that I grew up on, and we go back in Somerset to the 1500s. And it's not just about the few people who work the land, it's the economy that is generated around them. You know, the economy that delivers those tractors, for example, all the people employed, but also all the people that do all the other jobs for the farmers now, helping clear out their ditches or cut their hedges. And I really do hope that the government is listening, because we also need to have these farmers to be thriving and surviving. They're the backbone of the farming community, because actually we also need them not just to produce food, and that's more critical than ever to have food security, but we need them to look after the environment, and we need them to be able to access the grants that we need them to look after the hedges, to look after the songbirds, to have healthy soil, which will help stop flooding, hold carbon capture. So it's much, much more than producing food.
Well, this is one of the misconceptions that we hear quite a lot, that farmers are almost abusing the land rather than being the custodians, the people who care the most about our beautiful countryside, the people who care the most about animals and wildlife. Often when you speak to farmers, they're so passionate about keeping the beautiful green and pleasant land green and pleasant. The government would say, and they've said in the last couple of days, at least today anyway, it's reported that they've injected £343 million into the rural economy this month. I don't know exactly where that's going, but that doesn't really make sense numbers-wise, does it? You're taking with one hand and giving maybe with the other?
It's difficult to get your head around it. One of the best Brexit wins was actually the fact that we could leave the common agricultural policy and we could set up our own system for managing our countryside with the money, with the exact amount of money that we got under the common agricultural policy. And that system didn't work very well, because most of the money went to the top biggest farmers because they had the most land, because you just got the money for having land, didn't actually have to do anything. So we, under the Conservatives, created this much fairer system, and farmers get money, but they have to do something for it. And a lot of that is looking after the soil in the right way, managing it sustainably, as I say, cutting your hedges only every other year so that the birds have got somewhere to nest and there are berries for them to eat, planting wildflower margins for the pollinators, all of those things. And this is the new system that they can access. But we were running down the old system called basic payments, and the Conservative government gave them until 2028 to finally run that down. So the farmers knew how much money was coming into their accounts, and suddenly that also is being stopped early. So it's a whole raft of things that are hitting the farmers, as well as the national insurance rise, which is hitting everybody, and the wage rises. And now we've also just heard, I think this week, that there's going to be a tax on fertiliser coming in to make up for how much carbon might have been producing that fertiliser, and that's been introduced by the Energy Department. So I think they feel people are coming at them from all angles.
Yeah, that is certainly something. Fertiliser is something very expensive anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rebecca, the Environment Secretary Steve Reed insists that they are committed to farmers, and there is a £5 billion 2-year farming budget, the largest ever directed at sustainable food production in the country's history. What would you say to that?
Well, I'm pleased that they have kept that money going, but actually what farmers were asking for and what, in fact, the Conservatives had wanted to do was increase that money, because that's hardly standing still. It sounds like a lot of money, but that's what our entire environment and farming business get. I mean, compare that to what the NHS gets. And actually, if the farmers get what they do, right, healthy food, healthy environment, clean water, carbon capture, we'll have a healthy population. So it's money well spent. So I would urge the government to really listen to these folks. I would urge them to actually increase the money, at least in line with inflation. And I know they have just announced some improvements to what's called the Countryside Stewardship Scheme, and I welcome that. That's really good, with some measures in there to help tackle flood resilience and look after some rare species and so forth. That's good, but let's have more of it, and let's just really nurture this farming community. And look, we actually want young people to think this is a great industry to go into.
Well, you know what? We've been hearing quite a lot from very young farmers, actually.
Absolutely.
Those people who will be worrying about inheriting the farm off their parents or their grandparents. How on earth are they going to pay this tax?
They are worried.
Are they going to be able to keep the farm in their hands? Are they going to have to sell it off? Really worrying for young people who have the burden of that on their shoulders. But thank you so much for coming into the studio. Rebecca Powell, former Minister for Nature and the Environment. Great to speak to you about all this.
Thank you, Rebecca. Now, in some breaking news, 3 family members have been found guilty of the murder of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif, and the Old Bailey jury found that her father, Irfan Sharif, his wife and brother all played a part in a campaign of abuse culminating in Sarah's death last August.
Yes, GBNews national reporter Charlie Peters has the background to the case.
An innocent 10-year-old girl, her life stolen by those who should have protected her. Sarah Sharif was a bubbly girl. Teachers in Woking said she was confident and full of ideas. But her smile was extinguished. Her body was found with dozens of injuries at her family home in August last year. She had been brutally killed. No one else was in the house. Her family had fled to Pakistan, seen here arriving for a flight from Heathrow. Her father left a note on her body that said, "Love you, Sarah," and "I swear that my intention was not to kill her. I am running away because I am scared." Irfan Sharif made a dramatic call to police officers from Pakistan, appearing to confess to her murder.
I cannot. I physically punished my daughter and she died. I left home in a panic. God, she's allowed at home.
I need you to take a breath because I cannot understand what you're saying, okay? Your daughter has died.
I killed my daughter. I killed my daughter.
When they returned, Sharif was arrested on the tarmac alongside Benash Batul, Sarah's stepmother, and Faisal Malik, her uncle. All 3 denied murder or allowing her death.
Can you tell us, please, what happened? No comment.
What's your understanding of murder? What's your understanding of that offence?
Killing someone.
What happened to Sarah?
No comment.
Who is responsible for her death?
No comments. This little girl was tortured.
No comments.
Jurors at the Old Bailey trial heard about the campaign of abuse inflicted on her. They learned that Sarah had been hooded, burned, bitten and beaten during more than 2 years of violence. Sarah started wearing a hijab. She was the only member of her family to wear a head covering. The hijab hid the injuries to her face. Forensic pathologists detailed dozens of injuries to her bones. She was beaten so badly with a cricket bat that it broke her spine. She was attacked with a white metal pole, causing multiple fractures. One expert said it was even possible that Sarah had been starved in the days before her death. As the trial reached its conclusion, Irfan Sharif dramatically accepted full responsibility for her death, but denied that he had intended to kill her. Under cross-examination, Sarah's father said, "She died because of me." He had previously argued that Batul was a psycho responsible for Sarah's death, and that the note on her body and his phone call were made to protect his wife. His lawyer said that Sharif will be in the circles of hell for eternity. And as justice is delivered, Sarah is resting, finally, in peace. Charlie Peters, GB News, the Old Bailey.
Just the most harrowing case. I remember Charlie Peters standing outside the court telling us all the details of the horror that girl went through. So yes, we know that Sarah Sharif's father, stepmother, have been found guilty of her murder, and her uncle also found guilty of causing or allowing her death. Truly horrifying.
Yeah, just the most horrific case. And this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. We will be back at those farmers' protests shortly.
And there we go, there's a little shot of the farmers.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now we're joined now by Sophia Varaji, the co-founder of the Azealia Foundation, which was created due to the tragic passing of her 8-month-old daughter to leukemia. The foundation is doing some incredible work for children's cancer.
Yeah, some really incredible stuff. They've just launched a PhD even, where they're funding young doctors to specialise in childhood cancer as, get this, I wasn't aware of this, it's one of the most underfunded areas in the NHS. So not many sectors choose to go down that route, unfortunately. The charity, the foundation, have donated over £1 million worth of equipment to hospitals as well, and we're delighted to welcome Sophia. You've turned a tragedy and grief into triumph, I guess, and something so inspiring. Just tell us about that. Do you recognise that in yourself and the work you're doing?
Yeah, I'm here to always honour my daughter and to always continue her name, her legacy, and to support all of these other children fighting against childhood cancer.
It was all over social media. I mean, you were at one point probably one of the most famous families in this country because of Azealia and Azalia's fight. When you look back now at that time, does it give you comfort that you had so many people behind you?
Absolutely. The community that we have got, the humanity that we've seen in the UK and all around the world, in fact, has really touched my heart. And that kindness, love and support has always been the backbone of carrying me through this, to give me hope, to give me belief. And it still inspires me and encourages me till today to continue to do that, to show that light, to show that courage and bravery.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion, Mark Meets, and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, welcome back. This is Good Afternoon Britain. It's 27 minutes past 1. Now, white British graduates have said they feel alienated by diversity policies and positive action schemes that they believe are limiting their career chances.
Yeah, this follows controversy over MI5 and MI6 excluding white British students from their summer internship programmes, claiming underrepresentation even on their workforce.
Yeah, so they think that's the reason why. But these workplaces are not the only ones imposing restrictions on candidates. Other big companies like the BBC, The Guardian, other banks perhaps, are also following suit. So what's going on here?
Yeah, and joining us now is the former Conservative Deputy Chairman, Jonathan Gullis. Jonathan, welcome to GB News. Now, of course, I think many people would argue that we need some diversity in the workforce, but should it be at the expense of discriminating against a certain group, as sometimes seems to be, as seems to be suggested here?
Well, as you say in your question, it's a form of discrimination when you seek to exclude a certain portion of the population. In this case, it would be predominantly, let's be quite frank, white working class individuals. And actually, during my time in Parliament, we on the Education Select Committee did an investigation into the educational outcomes. If you don't mind, I'll just quickly say that in early years, 2018, 2019, just 53% of free school meal eligible white British pupils were meeting the expected standard of development at the end of their early years foundation stage, one of the lowest percentages for any group. In 2019 on GCSEs, 39,000, again, white British free school meal eligible children actually underachieved in not getting a pass in English and maths. That's 39,000, didn't get it compared to their other peers. It's 5% below. And when it comes to access to higher education, again, white British pupils who are free school meals eligible, starting higher education by age of 19, in 2018-19 was 16%, the lowest of any ethnic group other than traveller or Irish heritage such as Gypsy Roma. It is an abomination that these people in particular, like the residents I was proud to serve in Stoke-on-Trent, are being overlooked and excluded because we're more focused on this DEI woke nonsense that doesn't look at meritocracy, but instead looks at what makes us different, which only drives to actually create a division in society.
We've got a problem here, haven't we? If we've got big businesses, corporations, fantastic graduate schemes who are limiting who they hire based on ethnicity or sometimes gender as well. I mean, I remember when I was leaving school and looking at internships and traineeships, and back then there were lots of schemes that were only open to girls or only open to ethnic minorities. And I remember scratching my head all the way back then, and it seems like nothing's really changed when it comes to this, that some schemes are genuinely only open to people of a certain skin colour or not white. I mean, it does just seem totally ridiculous when we have such a diverse country now.
Well, absolutely. It's insanity beyond belief. And as I say, it's virtue signaling of the highest order from these companies and even from our universities who have bursary schemes, again, predominantly targeted at BAME students, but not again for white working class British students who, again, as we know, are less likely than any other ethnic group other than Gypsy Roma to go on to university. It is an abomination to undermine these what is a large portion of this country, let's be perfectly frank, but people in Stoke-on-Trent who are perfectly able and capable of going on to achieve great things, but not having the same access to opportunities than those, just because, as you say, of the difference of the colour of their skin. It is not right, it is not moral, and it is wrong. And we need to scrap this DEI nonsense once and for all. There was clearly a rejection of it wholesale in America, as we saw in that recent presidential election where President-elect Trump has now been re-elected. I think it's time that Labour Party and the Conservative Party make clear promises where they run local authorities, where they run mayoralties, and in Labour's case, where they're in government, that this is going once and for all. Absolutely, we want more female engineers. Absolutely, we want anyone from any ethnic background to go on to succeed. But that comes through meritocracy, not because you tick a box.
That's common sense, isn't it? Jonathan, thank you so much. Jonathan Gullis, Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party. I mean, looking at our GB News reporter, spoke to a number of graduates. One here, Matthew, saying, it's always been his dream to work for The Guardian, but due to the fact he's white and British, no opportunities appear to be open to him. For example, their paid work experience programme only for BAME and disabled applicants. So there's a problem here, isn't it? Because, how are you going to get into these newspapers? It's going to have to be nepotism then. Well, if you're white and British, or, you're not going to be able to join any of these schemes, at least.
Exactly. And one of these, a lot of these big companies are criticised for perhaps being slightly disproportionate at the top of the food chain, as it were. Those big bosses tend to be white, tend to be male. But then the other argument is, of course, they're overcompensating at the bottom. So all these new graduates coming through is kind of defeating the object,
But
if
it's
that
just
makes
ridiculous,
sense.
isn't it? The younger the age, the more diverse the makeup of the country.
Yeah.
So, yes, if you have a group of 50-year-olds, it's going to be less diverse than a group of 8-year-olds.
Well, let us know
or
what you think.
18-year-olds, anyway.
Yeah, let us know what you think. gbnews.com/your say. GB News has approached The Guardian and the BBC for comments, but are yet to hear a response.
Yes, well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. You are looking now at live pictures, there you go, of central London because the farmers, huge numbers of farmers, hundreds of farmers have descended on the capital in their tractors. Well, to say to Keir Starmer, please don't tax us into oblivion. So there you go, we'll be there next.
Good afternoon, it's 1:33. These are your headlines from the GB newsroom. Sarah Sharif's father and stepmother have been found guilty of murdering the 10-year-old before fleeing to Pakistan. The Old Bailey heard how Sarah was hooded, tied up, beaten with a cricket bat, burnt with an iron and even bitten in a brutal campaign of abuse in the weeks before her death on the 8th of August last year. Her body was found 2 days later in a bunk bed at her home in Surrey after her 42-year-old father, Irfan Sharif, called police from Pakistan, where he had fled with her stepmother, Bainash Batul, and the rest of his family. Her uncle, Faisal Malik, who's 29, is found not guilty of murder, but guilty of causing or allowing the death of a child. Hundreds of farmers have descended on Westminster with their tractors today as the government insists its support for the sector is steadfast. Last month, over 13,000 people rallied against the changes to inheritance tax. But despite the protests, the government says they will not change course on the policy. Today, farmers are warning the proposed changes could kill British farming.
This is the death of farming that's going to happen under this government. So we want to mark that. But once we get to Parliament, you give them what for. We're here to make a noise. This is a war we will win, and the government will do a U-turn. That is determined by all of us to push that.
Meanwhile, inside the Commons, Sir Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch clashed over immigration at Prime Minister's questions today. The opposition leader criticised the Prime Minister's record on immigration, but Sir Keir Starmer hit back by accusing the Tories of losing control of the borders.
I'm glad she now wants to talk about immigration. Last week she said she didn't, and for good reason, because the previous government presided over record high levels of immigration. The figures just a few weeks ago, nearly 1 million on net migration. That is unprecedented. A one-nation experiment in open borders under the last government. And she was the champion. She stood up and praised the then Tory Home Secretary for listening to her on removing caps on migration visas. So she was applauding it. Now she's furious about what she was campaigning for. We will drive it down. We will drive down lawful migration. We'll drive down illegal migration.
And now, an 18-year-old man has been sentenced to 1 year in a Dubai jail for having a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old girl. That's according to a campaign group. Marcus Fakana from Tottenham was with his parents in Dubai in August when a holiday romance blossomed with another Londoner who has since turned 18. After returning home and seeing pictures and chats, the girl's mother reported the relationship to Dubai police, who then arrested Fakana at his hotel. Sex with another person under the age of 18 is illegal in Dubai. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's another dry but rather cloudy day for many of us. Brightest skies will be in the north with some decent sunshine for parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland, although here some lingering fog into the afternoon because that's where this centre of high pressure remains, and we've got light winds and actually relatively cold conditions throughout. Some frost remaining into the afternoon as well as those lingering fog patches. Otherwise, it's sunny skies for much of Scotland, cloudier for England, Wales, and a bit more cloud for Northern Ireland compared with the last few days, where we've got the cloud 6 to 8 Celsius. Where we've got the lingering fog, temperatures could remain below freezing throughout the day, and then that fog tending to thicken once again overnight. But for much of England and Wales, it's a fine afternoon, albeit rather cloudy. There'll be some light showers coming into the south coast, otherwise dry for the vast majority. A few sunny spells appearing into North Wales and staying clear here into the evening and overnight, but the clearest skies will be once again across much of Scotland, hence the relatively low temperatures as the sun goes down. So frost and fog for much of Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well as northwest England and North Wales, but a lot of cloud, and there'll be increasing areas of cloud into the north and east of Scotland, the south of Scotland as well. Northern Ireland, much of England and Wales seeing the cloud lower overnight, and some drizzly rain will arrive into the east coast as the night progresses. So a chilly start to the day, but the coldest weather will be in the far north, where we've got clear skies overnight and some fog patches first thing. Otherwise, a lot of cloud and increasingly damp weather moving into the east of England and then pushing into the Midlands, central southern England, East Wales, and eventually northern England. Outbreaks of showery light rain, 8 to 10 Celsius in the south.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley, Warwickshire, and the M40 both sides of the carriageway. Lane 3 is combed off from Warwick at 15 through towards Henley and Arden at 16. There's been a collision. It's a busy on the approaches. To Hampshire, Red Hill, the A343 closed between Ashmansworth and Hoddington Cross. There's a fallen tree there, so still no way through. Now, there's a farmers' demonstration taking place in Westminster and London, so Whitehall is currently closed between Trafalgar Square and Parliament Square. Congestion back towards Millbank, diverting in both directions on Victoria Embankment and back through Trafalgar Square. Also seeing queues via Victoria and Hyde Park Corner as well. And the anti-clockwise M25 still queuing towards the Dartford Tunnel. That follows an earlier bump. It's heavy back towards the Darrenth interchange at Junction 2. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain. It is 20 to 2. Now, furious farmers have descended once again on Whitehall as protests continue over changes to inheritance tax.
OK, well, let's go straight back to GB News presenter Patrick Christys, who's on the ground for us at the protest. Patrick, tell us, what's the mood like now?
Hello. We are right in the thick of it in Whitehall here. We're dodging tractors left, right and centre. As you can hear, the farmers are not happy. We've got no farmers, no future. There's a music playing here, and they've got the Union Jack here. Fight the tax, save our farms. There are signs everywhere here, but the mood is clear. They just want Keir Starmer to reverse the tax. Now, I'm going to talk to a couple of characters here now. Here we go. Sir, what's your name? Where have you come from?
I'm Marcus from Oxfordshire.
Marcus, and what's your name, sir?
Maurice, from Oxfordshire as well.
And who's this chap here?
This is Blitz.
Blitz? Okay, lovely. Now, sir, why are you here today?
No farmers, no income. So we both rely on farmers to generate our income.
Yeah.
No farmers.
No farmers, no food.
No ferreting.
So you ferret, do you?
We keep the rabbit control. We keep the rabbits down so the farmers can grow the food that we all eat.
Okay, all right. And what would your message be to Keir Starmer?
Back down. The arithmetic doesn't add up.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
I know that some of the concerns as we walk through this protest here now, some of the concerns are that they're giving away as much money in foreign aid as they would be getting from this tax. What I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and get in one of these tractors with people here, and I might be able to just flag one down here now and just see if we can get in. So come with me and see if we can try and find out some of the reasons about why they're really here. Here we go. Come around. As you can hear, the noise is incredibly loud here. Guys, hello, can we open the door? Hello, I'm sorry to bother you. Can I ask you why you're here today?
We're here so British agriculture doesn't die and everyone still has food.
And you're a young farmer, are you? And are you worried about your future?
Yeah, well, if we don't do something about it sooner than later, there'll be nothing left.
What's your message to the Prime Minister?
I think he needs to just realise that we're still here and all we want to do is produce food for the British public.
Yeah, I think don't bite the hand that feeds you is the message here. We've also just got this here around. So the other major concern is that if we lose the farmland that we've got at the moment, it will be sold to major international companies, and that will change the landscape of British farming forever, and it will change the quality of food that we all have. I'm going to throw back to you in the studio here, because I'm about to go deaf.
Take that ringtone music any longer, Patrick. Thank you very much indeed, Patrick. They're talking to farmers. I mean, what they're saying is just please back down, Keir Starmer. The future of farming depends on it. I was reading actually on the old Twitter that apparently they were playing Baby Shark out loud, that some of the farmers were, from their tractor, which has got to be one of the most annoying ringtones. So I guess the message to Keir Starmer, if you want this hullabaloo to stop, you've got to back down on this inheritance tax.
Yeah, don't remember, this is just outside of Downing Street, and if you're getting annoyed by it, Emily, perhaps the people in Downing Street trying to work hard as well. I also heard Crazy Frog, one of the foghorns of the tractors as well. I'd love to know how they actually end up doing that. But of course, there is a very serious message that the farmers were telling Patrick there. No farmers, no food. British agriculture should stay. It doesn't lie as well, of course, and also the scale of it. There are so many tractors we're seeing live on our screens now here on GB News in central London, of the tractors who have travelled far and wide to be here as well, from right across the nation to the home counties. I believe some have come from Somerset as well. This has been highly organised, hasn't it, Emily?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think a lot of these farmers do believe, you know, if they make their point loudly and clearly enough, with the backing of the National Farmers Union, with the backing of the Farmers Weekly, all of the different farming groups, all the different lobby groups, all the different representatives, that maybe, just maybe they can convince Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer to back down on this one. So far, they seem to be standing strong on this one, saying absolutely no, we will not U-turn. But who knows? They're certainly making their voices loud and clear, aren't they, Cameron?
Yeah, they certainly are. And we heard earlier from Nigel Farage. He was part of the protest. The government, just to provide a little bit of balance here, the government would say that they are putting £343 million into the rural economy and payments for nature-friendly farming activities, which will benefit 31,000 farmers. It looks like these farmers we're seeing in our screens are perhaps not impressed by that response from the government.
No, I know Kemi Badenoch went on the immigration question a little bit earlier in Prime Minister's questions, which is obviously a difficult one for Kemi Badenoch because the Conservatives presided over such sky-high levels of immigration for so many years. But perhaps she should have gone on farming with all of this going on right outside the House of Commons. You would have thought you'd want to punish Keir Starmer on this very issue when you've got hordes of tractors lining up, bringing central London to a standstill there.
Absolutely. And Patrick Christie's made the point that actually the money being given out in terms of foreign aid by the British government is actually the kind of amounts that they are saving with this inheritance tax change. Now, we don't have the specific figures on that, but you mentioned, of course, the fact that Kemi Badenoch went on the Syria issue and the British jihadist issue in the Houses of Parliament during Prime Minister's question.
But this issue of foreign aid going over towards agricultural projects in other countries. Now, that is a very good argument that's coming from some of these farmers. You know, this government is willing to spend millions of pounds abroad on helping farmers in developing countries, but they're willing to potentially put an end to a number of family farms in this country that provide us with food security. God forbid there was a war in this country. Who would we be relying on for food? We'd be relying on these very farmers who are down there in Whitehall, taking the day off to protest for the future of their families, the custodians of our beautiful countryside. And at the moment, they don't feel like they're being treated very well indeed. But we'll be returning to Whitehall very shortly as well to see exactly what the farmers are saying and whether they believe they can actually force this government to make a U-turn.
This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Yes, we do. Fasting for Gaza Gaza, one school is encouraging children to fast all day for the plight of the Gazans. What do you make of that?
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's a time for the vegan community to get together, as well as an opportunity for non-vegans to try going plant-based.
Well, joining us now is from her delicious hummus. We both love hummus. This is a great thing. This is the founder of Chickpea, Hannah McCollum. Hannah, lovely to meet you. And you've brought in some of your beautiful products in front of you here. So can you talk us through some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a range of chilled hummus, and then latest to the range of a new ambient snack pot, which is a fridgeless hummus that doesn't require refrigeration. But I started Chickpea because of my love for hummus, but also sustainability and reducing food waste and encouraging people to be more plant-based without saying go vegan.
Does normal, say, traditional hummus have anything that's not vegan appropriate in it?
Not really.
No,
I think
it's always chickpeas, olive oil, maybe some other bits.
Yeah, lemon juice, aquafibre or water to help with the consistency, garlic, and rapeseed oil or olive oil.
And there's a bit of a misconception about veganism that I hear a lot, where people say, look, I'm not a vegan, I love my steaks, I'll just get out of there now. But there's a misconception that you don't get the protein, you don't get the fats, and you're kind of just eating processed salads and, fake meat and things. But that's not quite the case, especially with chickpeas, right?
Yeah, I think protein is really important, and actually a lot of people think I need a certain amount of fish every week or meat, but actually a lot of the fish and meat that you're eating are eating higher protein foods, so algae, seaweed, pulses, all these types of plant-based foods. For me, veganism is like you could have a delicious rye seeded bread with just loads of roasted vegetables, seeds, tahini sauce on top.
That sounds
and there's nothing beige in there at all.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Right, good afternoon, Britain. It's 1:50. Now, a London secondary school has asked children to fast for Gaza this Friday.
Yes, staff and students at George Green School in Tower Hamlets have been told to come together in a collective fast in support of the people of Palestine.
OK, well, the co-ed state school has launched a Just Giving page to raise funds for a crisis appeal in aid of Gazan children run by the humanitarian charity UNICEF. OK, well, joining us to discuss this is the reporter at the Jewish Chronicle, Jane Prinsley. Jane, you broke this story. What exactly is going on here, then?
Yeah, so this is happening this Friday. The school have said they are still going ahead with the hunger strike, and they have actually asked pupils to take part. So they've said they're not forcing pupils, but they have explicitly asked. I've spoken to a Jewish parent at the school who wanted to remain anonymous, such as their fear for the safety of their child, who said their child feels really ostracised at the school and unable to reveal their Jewish identity. Children are being made to feel like Judaism is wrong, compared to other religions at this particular school, according to one parent. And this fast is really exacerbating the issue. And if you look at this in the broader picture of Tower Hamlets is the poorest borough in London. At this school, over 50% of children qualify for free school meals. We all know how important it is that children get a healthy, hearty meal. But on Friday, these children are being encouraged not to eat at all during the school day.
And some pupils are saying that if they do opt out, they're going to face some kind of stigma or indeed, kind of discrimination, peer pressure. Do you think that potentially could be a danger?
Exactly. What's happened is the onus has been put on young people to sort of opt out of the fast rather than opt in. The expectation is that the young people are going to be taking part in this fast. It's the second year in a row that the school has organised such a fast. They've said it's being done kind of with the children, the student voice in mind. But obviously for the children who don't want to participate, they're going to feel like they stand out, like they don't support the people in Gaza. And it's really difficult situation for children.
I mean, it's utterly bizarre, isn't it? I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a parent there who didn't want their child to take part in this. I'd be absolutely furious if I thought the head teacher was encouraging my child to fast all day for what is, yes, there's a humanitarian crisis in Gaza, but it's all intertwined with politics.
Exactly. I think it's one thing doing a bake sale for a charity in Gaza. That's kind of one thing that I'm sure lots of schools are taking part in. But actually encouraging children not to eat when we know how important a nutritious meal is for children to be able to concentrate at school, when we know how many young people suffer from disordered eating. I think around 50% of children in Tower Hamlets start secondary school with obesity. So healthy eating is really important. It's not something to be played around with. But here we've got a school kind of using fasting as an activism tool in the classroom, which is quite bizarre. I'm not sure if it's happening in other schools, but...
Well, I think it's wrong, Jane. I think it's wrong. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Jane Prinsley, a reporter at the Jewish Chronicle, who broke this story.
Yes, now GB News has approached George Green's school for a right of reply, and the vice principal of the school has said the fast was organised in response to student voices on this issue and follows on from a similar event we ran a year ago, which raised several £1,000s. And he said the event was entirely voluntary and was well supported by members of the school community, including students, parents and staff.
Yes, I just wonder if you choose not to take part, whether you won't feel pressure or be, ostracised. Anyway, this Good Afternoon Britain. We will have more on the farmers' protest. Things appear to be very much kicking off at Whitehall.
First, here's your weather.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's another dry but rather cloudy day for many of us. Brightest skies will be in the north with some decent sunshine for parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland, although here some lingering fog into the afternoon because that's where this centre of high pressure remains, and we've got light winds and actually relatively cold conditions throughout. Some frost remaining into the afternoon as well as those lingering fog patches. Otherwise, it's sunny skies for much of Scotland, cloudier for England, Wales, and a bit more cloud for Northern Ireland compared with the last few days, where we've got the cloud 6 to 8 Celsius. Where we've got the lingering fog, temperatures could remain below freezing throughout the day, and then that fog tending to thicken once again overnight. But for much of England and Wales, it's a fine afternoon, albeit rather cloudy. There'll be some light showers coming into the south coast, otherwise dry for the vast majority. A few sunny spells appearing into North Wales and staying clear here into the evening and overnight, but the clearest skies will be once again across much of Scotland, hence the relatively low temperatures as the sun goes down. So frost and fog for much of Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well as northwest England and North Wales, but a lot of cloud, and there'll be increasing areas of cloud into the north and east of Scotland, the south of Scotland as well. Northern Ireland, much of England and Wales seeing the cloud lower overnight, and some drizzly rain will arrive into the east coast as the night progresses. So a chilly start to the day, but the coldest weather will be in the far north, where we've got clear skies overnight and some fog patches first thing. Otherwise, a lot of cloud and increasingly damp weather moving into the east of England and then pushing into the Midlands, central southern England, East Wales, and eventually northern England. Outbreaks of showery light rain, 8 to 10 Celsius in the south.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible
£50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Wednesday, the 11th of December. I'm Cameron Walker.
And I'm Emily Carver.
All eyes on Westminster as tractors descend on the capital. Pressure is mounting on Keir Starmer to backtrack on his family farm tax raid. But is his government listening?
OK, yes, we are right in the epicentre of the farmers' protest here in Whitehall. There's people with signs saying, fight the tax, save our farms. Family farm tax is a flocking sheep show, which I'm glad I was able to say. Back British farmers, young farmers are out in force as well. You can see them waving there. Open the door to me quickly, open the door to me quickly. Why are you here? Why are you here? Oh, no.
To stop the inheritance tax.
Stop the tax?
Yeah.
Stop the tax. All right, look, we're going to be reporting live from the epicentre of this farmers' protest all throughout the day. This is what it's all about. The message to Keir Starmer is, you are a farmer harmer, stop the tax.
Very good. Now, new prisons will be forced through the planning process by Angela Rayner. This under new powers that will allow the objections of local towns and villages to be completely ignored and overruled. Would you be happy with a prison next door?
And stay tuned to find out what happened after a house exploded in Ilford.
Quite extraordinary footage. Right, we're going to be back with Patrick there. They're excited. Open your tractor. They always do. They always do. They're keen to get their voices heard on the channel, which is fantastic stuff. But this Angela Rayner, essentially, so we need prisons. We all understand we need more prisons.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they are over full.
spilling over, and we've got an issue there. But yes, Angela Rayner is just going to basically bulldoze the planning process and say, you know what, town and village near you, let's open up a super prison.
Well, maybe it's a bit of a lose-lose maybe for the government, because of course there was so much upsets when they had to release prisoners early because there aren't enough prison spaces. Then they've got plans to build these super prisons in a couple of counties throughout England. Buckinghamshire's one, I can't quite remember the other two off the top
I think Lancashire.
of my head. Lancashire, you're correct. But of course, Angela Rayner's plan is to kind of disregard what the local councils say when it comes to their planning intentions and just build this prison anyway, which is clearly going to upset locals. I think many people, if a massive super prison was going to have 1,400 prisoners, which will completely dominate and outpopulate the population of the village, they'll be a little bit upset about that.
Yeah, I mean, if Tom Harwood was here, he's actually in America this week, but if he was here, he'd say, you know what, bulldoze those planning processes, build that super prison next to you. But I imagine if he was living in a village and then suddenly a super prison was just plonked right next to him, he might have something else to say.
Yeah,
but he's not here. He has no right to reply on this show. But anyway, let us know what you make of it all. Would you welcome a super prison on your doorstep? Anyway, gbnews.com/your say is the way to get in touch. But it's your headlines with Sophia.
Emily Cameron, thank you. It's just gone 2 o'clock. These are your headlines from the GB Newsroom. Sarah Sharif's father and stepmother have been found guilty of murdering the 10-year-old before fleeing to Pakistan. The Old Bailey heard how Sarah was hooded, tied up, beaten with a cricket bat, burnt with an iron and even bitten in a brutal campaign of abuse in the weeks before her death on the 8th of August last year. Her body was found 2 days later in a bunk bed at her home in Surrey, after her 42-year-old father, Irfan Sharif, called police from Pakistan, where he had fled with her stepmother, Bainash Batul, and the rest of his family. Her uncle, Faisal Malik, who's 29, is found not guilty of murder, but guilty of causing or allowing the death of a child. Hundreds of farmers have descended on Westminster with their tractors today, as the government insists its support for the sector is steadfast. Last month, over 13,000 people rallied against the changes to inheritance tax. But despite the protests, the government says they will not change course on the policy. Today, farmers are warning the proposed changes could kill British farming.
This is the death of farming that's going to happen under this government. So we want to mark that. But once we get to Parliament, you give them what for. We're here to make a noise. This is a war. We will win. And the government will do a U-turn. That is determined by all of us to push that.
Meanwhile, inside the Commons, Sir Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch clashed over immigration at Prime Minister's questions today. The opposition leader criticised the Prime Minister's record on immigration, but Sir Keir Starmer hit back by accusing the Tories of losing control of the borders.
I'm glad she now wants to talk about immigration. Last week she said she didn't, and for good reason, because the previous government presided over record high levels of immigration. The figures just a few weeks ago, nearly 1 million on net migration. That is unprecedented. A one-nation experiment in open borders under the last government. And she was the champion. She stood up and praised the then Tory Home Secretary for listening to her on removing caps on migration visas. So she was applauding it. Now she's furious about what she was campaigning for. We will drive it down. We will drive down lawful migration. We'll drive down illegal migration.
And some breaking news. A ban on puberty blockers for children with gender dysphoria in the UK is to be made indefinite after experts warned of an unacceptable safety risk. The government said that following official advice from medical experts, existing emergency measures banning the sale and supply of the drugs outside of clinical trials will stay in place. Health and Social Care Secretary Wes Streeting said there is a need to act with caution and follow the expert advice in caring for those who are vulnerable groups of young people. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Emily and Cameron.
OK, welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain. It's 2:06. Now, furious farmers are in Whitehall. They've descended on the capital as protests continue over these changes to inheritance tax.
Yeah, this comes following numerous UK-wide rallies over the last few weeks, including over 20,000 farmers in central London protesting last month. And over in the House of Commons, the NFU president, that's the National Farmers Union, Tom Bradshaw, was reduced to tears earlier.
It's not money. This is a lifetime of work. It's the heritage. And the custodianship of that farm.
Yeah, I mean, he will have had hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the farming community phoning him up with all of their worries, the weight of this burden on their shoulders. But we're joined by GB News presenter Patrick Christys, who's at the protest for us this afternoon. Patrick, it's a noisy, vibrant experience. What's going on now?
Yes. Yes, well, certainly an assault on the eardrums, and that's exactly what they're hoping to do. This is something that they want to make Keir Starmer and co here, whether it's in Downing Street down the road. But I just want to give you a picture of the scale of this thing. So if you can maybe come here and just stare right down that line. These tractors are spread all the way down to Trafalgar Square and all the way past where I was before. And this is an absolutely epic display of what they see as a betrayal. Now, if we just come back towards me here now, there's an individual who's making his way towards me. I've not met this chap before. I've not spoken to him. I've just seen him now. And sir, why are you here today?
Well, we're trying to make sure our family will still be farming in 6 generations.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been farming since 1901 down on the Sussex Downs. My son and daughter have driven a tractor up from Worthing, about 70 odd miles. They've gone round. We were up here for the last protest and we will be here for another one.
Now, can you just explain to our viewers and listeners what the consequences of this tax will mean for you in real terms?
Every generation our farm will get 20% smaller. And as we're only just making a living for ourselves at the moment, we'll be selling, people will be buying, farms will go downhill very sharp. The quality of the food will disappear. I mean, you want to buy foreign stuff, muck to be polite, up to you. But British food is good, it's quality, and we're proud to produce it for people.
But there's something even more than that, which is that the countryside and the people who work the land, there's something inherently British about that, and once it's gone forever. And is that something that concerns you?
Oh, definitely. We're lucky to an extent we farm in the South Downs. Yeah, and there's lots of regulations about what we can and can't do. Some are good, some need some more thought about them. But if you want to see green fields, etc., let the farmers get on with it. The countryside is what we've made already, and we will only improve it. But if we're starting to lose money, go out of business, big business will take over. It'll either get built on or treated as factory farms.
And they're hoping to raise something like £500 million as a result of this, but they give about 250 million quid, if not more, away in foreign subsidies to foreign farmers as part of foreign aid. I mean, that doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Makes no sense whatsoever. The food they produce, yes, they need it locally in their countries to feed their people, but when we start importing food from other countries, the people there have got nothing to eat. So there's no quality control on it. I mean, the docks and imports are suffering as it is, from what we hear. No, yeah, keep the money in this country. If you want good food,
Now, here we go. Just stay here, because we've got all of this tooting going on, all of this noise going on around us. Look at this here. Okay. So these are some young farmers here who are flashing their lights and tooting their horns. Come with me, sir. Look after yourself on the way. I want you to open your door for me, if that's all right, and talk to me, please. So come on. All right. Now, you are live on GB News. Okay. So come here. Now,
I'm the farmer. Let me through.
Yeah, go on. So why are you here?
Because Starmer sucks. That's why.
All right.
And we don't like the budget, we don't like how we get treated, and it's going to get worse before it gets better.
And how is this going to directly affect you and your future as a farmer?
Big time. We'll have to sell our farm. Right. We'll have to sell our farm.
Yeah.
Just to pay the tax bill.
And how old are you?
I'm 33.
Okay, and can I ask, what's your daily routine like? What time do you get up in the morning? What time do you go to bed at night?
That's a very vague question. I mean, we work all hours. Do you know what I mean? There's no routine. There's no routine in what I do. Just a lot of bloody hours. Okay. A lot of bloody hours.
Okay, all right. And you're here to show support, yeah?
No,
we're journalists.
No, we're training journalists.
You're training journalists on the way. There you go.
We were just giving a quick interview in here.
I have gate crashed. I have nicked an interview for someone. I tell you what. Well, good luck to you both. You're doing great. You're doing great work, and keeping local journalism alive is another important cause. So well done. Take care. Good luck to you all. Good luck to you all. We might as well just keep coming with me, I think, while we're here. All right, because this is the scale of it. Let's dodge our way through here. Thank you. Let's dodge our way through here now. Let's look at this. Reverse SME hikes, back small businesses, farmers to action. We've got the Union Jacks here everywhere. We've got some more people here who are giving us a thumbs up. Let's go to you, sir. Let's go to you. Open your door for me. Open your door for me. Good lad. What are you drinking?
Pint of Guinness.
Good. All right, now, why are you here? Why is this so important to you?
Well, stop the inheritance tax on old family farms. We will not be affected by it now, but at some point, sadly, we will be affected by inheritance tax when a loved one dies. We've come here today just to show what numbers we can get together and how peaceful we can be. But imagine if we did want to cause trouble.
Right, so here we go. Would you consider going on strike?
If we need to, yes. Hopefully we get listened to and we don't have to do another protest. But if we need to go on strike, start blocking docks, dual carriageways, everything, we will have to. If we have to do it, we will do it.
And you feel as though you have to do it because you don't have a choice, right?
Yes. If we're not going to get listened to, we have to act upon it.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. What we're going to do is we're going to keep you look after yourself and enjoy that pint. Just keep coming with me, I think. Here we go. Let's see if we can find anyone else who's going to give us a little wave. Look at this now. No farmer, no feast. Merry Christmas. And this sums it up. They're saying, look, hey, they are the hand that feeds us, and why would Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves want to bite that hand? There are also other issues here when it comes to what kind of people are going to buy the land when these people go. Look, no farmers, no food, axe the tax, buckle up, we will not stop. No, one sec, come here. Yes, there's a dog involved. Hello, mate.
How's it going?
Look, what's your message to Keir Starmer? You're live on GB News. What's your message?
Get rid of the tax, leave the farmers alone.
And what's this one called?
Grouse.
Grouse, all right, okay. I tell you what, it's back to you in the studio.
Thank you so much, Patrick. That was great.
Bit of a party atmosphere down there. Got the Guinness going, you got a 3-in-1 tractor, you got the dogs there. It's a nice patriotic protest.
It certainly was. I liked the dog. I did fear for Patrick's mic there, though, because I once did a live when there was a dog involved and the dog stole the microphone.
Really?
Yeah.
Good
But luckily
grief.
this
That's
one
not
didn't.
what you want, is it? What happened?
Well, it was a police dog, but luckily we've managed to grab it back off the dog. And the
Anything
mic
can
was
happen.
not harmed
Anything
in the
can
protest.
happen. Also, I'm not sure who's given that scarf to Patrick. He didn't leave the house with that one, but there you go.
Did he not?
Perhaps the farmers helped him out. It's probably quite cold out there.
A bit of insider information there for you.
Well,
that's
we were
for sure.
saying, yes, the government would say that this is all to fill the financial black hole and that they will continue to support farmers in every way that they can. But I think it's clear that these farmers don't feel very well appreciated.
Yeah, and the Prime Minister's spokesperson very insistent that they're not going to U-turn on this and they're going to keep their tax plans. But as you say, lots of high emotions there, lots of noise, lots of very angry farmers on Whitehall. Let's see if the government does listen to them. Yeah,
well, should we turn our attention to some breaking news this afternoon? Because 3 family members have been found guilty of the murder of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif. The Old Bailey the jury has found that her father, Irfan Sharif, his wife and brother all played a part in a campaign of abuse culminating in Sarah's death last August.
We're joined now by our national reporter, Charlie Peters. Now, Charlie, you've been covering this trial for us, and it's just the most harrowing case, isn't it?
Yes, and the murder of a child is always appalling, but various government departments saying today that actually the murder of Sarah Sharif is particularly devastating due to not only the years of abuse and torture, frankly, that she suffered during this harrowing ordeal, but also the fact that during the trial, which we attended regularly, there are so many missed opportunities to intervene and save her life. Hearing the details towards the end of her life, how her body was deteriorating at the hands of just repeated and relentless abuse. I'm not going to go through all of the injuries. Frankly, it would take too long, and they're just so horrific that it's not worth going through. But it was a constellation of injuries, and it was a relentless campaign of abuse that she endured at the hands of those 3 people, all who've now been found guilty. And the particularly devastating thing about this case is those 3 people, should have been the ones who had cared for her and loved her during her life. Irfan Sharif, her father, guilty of murder. Bainash Batul, her stepmother, guilty of murder. And Faisal Malik, her uncle, also being found guilty of allowing the death of a child. I don't think those verdicts are particularly surprising after this 8-week trial, because the amount of information that was provided, and also the fact that Irfan Sharif had admitted to her murder and killing her in a note left on her body that was found by Surrey police last August, when they went to the home in Woking. They had fled to Pakistan, the whole family, including her siblings, Sarah's siblings. And it was once they arrived that Irfan Sharif made that phone call to 999 from Islamabad and said, "I did it, I killed her." He later claimed that he made this phone call to protect his wife, the stepmother, that is Bainash Batul. And he also made a shocking admission halfway through the trial, which really stunned the jurors. They were left with their mouths open while he said this in the witness stand. Irfan Sharif said, "Yeah, actually, I'm responsible. I killed her," and made that further sort of admission during questioning from a barrister from the prosecution. That was a stunning moment for the jury. But I believe we do have a statement from Detective Chief Inspector Craig Emerson of Surrey Police, who was speaking outside the Old Bailey just moments ago.
It's found Irfan Sharif and Bainash Batul, the father and stepmother of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif, guilty of her murder. Faisal Malik, Sarah's uncle, was found guilty of causing or allowing her death. Sarah was a bright and lively little girl who loved singing and dancing, and on behalf of Surrey Police, I would like to extend my deepest condolences to her mother Olga, her siblings, and all those who knew and cared for her. Sarah's spirit and bravery and resilience in the face of the suffering that she endured has shone through from the vast inquiries that have been undertaken in this case. Sarah's young life was brought to an end as a result of the brutal abuse and unspeakable violence inflicted on her by Sharif, Batul, which Malik did nothing to prevent.
Charlie, teachers noticed marks on her face and referred to her to social services, but the case was dropped within days. You speak of missed opportunities. Several missed opportunities.
And there were several investigations by social services and the children's care teams in the local council. She was living in a council flat as well, in a council house, when they moved to Woking as well. Sarah started wearing a hijab when she was at school. She was the only member of her family to do so. The prosecution said, and it was agreed in the trial, that this was done in order to cover up the injuries to her face. Teachers still recognised there were some bruises that were not new. So they were aware that there was something wrong in Sarah's life. They were making painstaking efforts to record all of what they were able to see. What was hidden from them was so much worse. It was beyond the realms of human imagination, the amount of torture that this little girl endured. It was heartbreaking being in that trial and hearing evidence from forensic pathologists and seeing the effect it had on everyone in the court was harrowing. But it's important, just very quickly, to remember something positive about Sarah Sharif, OK? She loved singing. She loved X Factor. She played the guitar. Her favourite food was chicken biryani. Her 10 years were brief and full of suffering, but there is light from her life as well.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll be remembered by those who did love her, both friends and people at the school and the community. It's just sickening, isn't it, to hear the harrowing details, but also that the perpetrators, her family, just fleeing to Pakistan, the cowardice, just hours after she died. Charlie, thank you very much indeed, and we know you've been at the court, you've heard the details firsthand. Thank you so much. Charlie Peters there, our national reporter.
Now, intelligence services remain concerned over the potential return of jihadists to the UK following the mass release of prisoners in Syria.
Yes, the Home Office are also reportedly monitoring the situation, with a large number of Syrian refugees in the UK now attempting to change their existing cases in order to stay in the country and avoid being deported back to their homeland. So if they were initially here because Assad was the leader of that country, now they need to change their refugee claim, presumably, because he's been toppled.
Well, joining us now is GBNews political editor Christopher Hope, who hopefully can shed some light on this. Christopher, what new information have we got today?
Yes, hi Cameron, hi Emily. Welcome back to the GBNews studio here in Westminster. That's right, Dame Angela Eagle, she's one of the senior Home Office ministers. She says that the talk of return to the UK of British jihadists from Syria is a matter of great concern. She says at this lunchtime that the security services, that's MI5, MI6, GCHQ, are, in quotes, keeping a very, very close eye on the situation on the ground. What's going on is there are big concerns that British jihadists held in prisons in northern Syria could be freed from jails in coming days. The UK has prescribed the new Syrian, well, such as it is, a government, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. There are concerns that anyone released could try and come back from Syria. And this group is of concern because it was formerly linked to al-Qaeda terrorist groups. In the past few years, though, they have made clear they are some way away from that. They've moved away from that group, and they would now say they are not part of it or even linked to it. But as things stand, HTS is proscribed by the UK government. That means that we can't directly talk to them. It does not rule out, though, the idea of talking via a proxy country, maybe Turkey. In the UK, though, for those here from Syria, the Home Office has paused the asylum seeking the asylum seeker process. Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, he said in the Commons this morning that these people should be returned to Syria once that peace is returned to that country, because, as you said there, Emily, this issue is with the regime of Bashar al-Assad, the former Syrian dictator. It's not an issue with the Syria as a country. That's where they are at the moment. So lots of concern from UK government about returning jihadists from Syria, and also those who are here, maybe they should be persuaded to go back to Syria.
Yes, decisions will have to be made. Christopher Hope, thank you very much indeed, our political editor there in Westminster. I mean, things are really kicking off actually on the continent in Germany, seeing pictures of, well, mass celebrations, of course, for Assad being toppled. But now lots of Germans saying we should pay Syrian refugees to leave, because, of course, Germany took over 1 million people from Syria as a result of the regime. But there you go.
Yeah, huge images of them running through Christmas markets in Germany. We know, of course, their next-door neighbour, Austria. They're preparing to send back Syrian asylum seekers to their home country as well. So, yeah, we'll have to watch this space and see if Britain perhaps could take a leaf out of Germany and Austria's book.
Yeah, OK. Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We do have a lot more coming up on today's show. We're going to be discussing whether a super prison could come near you, but also returning to those farmer protests, of course, that are taking over Whitehall there in central London in Westminster.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
Last orders at the bar, and I'm joined by Geordie Shore star Ricky Guanaccio. Have I said that right? Is that Italian?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Is Italian, your parents Italian? Is it?
Pronunciation was pretty much perfect.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, look, mate, Geordie Shore, I've never watched it, mate, so I do apologise about that. But I know these reality TV shows are making big stars out of the people, making you famous, making you loads of money. Is it worth it?
For me personally, yeah. It's been a hell of a career. Been a hell of a lot of fun doing it. Ups and downs, but first and foremost, money-wise, yeah.
That's good. So people stopping in the street, you being famous, wanting the autograph and all. How did you cope with that, Ricky?
Well, when we first started doing the show, I mean, we got our show off the back of Jersey Shore in America. We never expected the fame that we got, and, you know, being one of the biggest reality TV shows in the UK and now the world, you know, it's in 150-odd countries worldwide. Wow. It's pretty crazy. It's when you're living in houses. I mean, for example, Geordie Shore and Love Island's probably the same as well. When you're living in villas and you're living in houses, the arguing side sort of plays on your mind. You've got to deal with all that. You know, it's a hard place to be. It's a pressure cooker.
You're living in one of these villas, Ricky, or one of these houses. Do you ever wake up one morning and think, what am I doing here?
When I first started, yes. Yeah. Now, I love it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't mind all the, you know, there's no emotion connecting me now with filming. It's kind of like I go in there, it's fun, or it's, you know, it's dramatic, whatever it may be.
Okay. Have you ever worked behind a bar?
No.
No?
Yeah, for not a long period of time, my mum and dad had a...
Well, I can say...
Definitely messed this one up.
Yeah, I can actually believe that you've never worked behind.
Yeah, so my parents sacked us when I worked in the restaurant.
Well, obviously, I mean, you wouldn't get a job here with a pint like that, would you?
Do you want it?
No, mate, no.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Now, the Justice Secretary has announced plans to create 14,000 new prison spaces by 2031 as part of a 10-year prison capacity strategy. Bit of a mouthful, aimed at ensuring the government can keep the public safe.
Yes, OK, so while Shabana Mahmood insists this is a realistic plan for delivery, she has acknowledged that even with these expansions, prisons may still face overcrowding in the future. Now, the contention here is that Angela Rayner is essentially going to allow the Ministry of Justice to say, OK, we need a prison here, we need a prison there, and we're going to ignore any local objections. We're not going to go through the usual planning procedures because prisons are now national important infrastructure projects. I believe that's what they're calling them, or important infrastructure. Yeah. I don't know. It's very important infrastructure, and so therefore we don't care about local council objections, don't care about local people objections. OK, fine. So I guess the question is, would you be comfortable having a prison built next door? That's what's happening. That's
these aren't any old prisons. These are super prisons with thousands, over 1,000 prisoners in each of them. And if that's built next to a village of 500, is that going to upset the locals? But let's get the thoughts now of retired prison governor Vanessa Frake. I mean, it's a difficult balance, Vanessa, for the government, isn't it? Because on the one hand, we are running out of prison spaces. We do need to build more prisons. But of course, wherever you end up building it, you're going to upset the locals near where it's built.
Yes, and I totally understand that. You know, people have the same objections to new housing estates. You know, they can be a plus side to having a prison relatively near you. It can bring in jobs, it can bring in money from staff going to using shops, etc. So there can be pluses to it. I understand, you know, people's concerns, but you know, thankfully, our prison service has a very good record on keeping prisoners in custody.
Yeah, I mean, Vanessa, a lot of people getting in touch this afternoon saying the prisons, we wouldn't need more prisons if we didn't have so many foreign offenders clogging up our prison spaces. And it's true, isn't it? It's a significant minority of prisoners in this country who are foreign, who could potentially just be deported instead, and that would free up a huge amount of space, and then we wouldn't need a new super prison in a village near you.
No, that's true, but, you know, the reason we need more prisons is because we have more crime. That's the long and the short of it. Never mind what nationality somebody is. But indeed, we do have a lot of foreign national prisoners, around about 3,000 or 4,000, which languish in our prison system for far too long. But, you know, there's human rights lawyers that take cases on a regular basis and quote the Human Rights Act to prevent people from being shipped back, never mind to say the country that they're supposedly from agrees to take them back. So it is a bit of a stalemate, unfortunately.
Yeah, and Vanessa, as a retired prison governor, even yourself, what kind of relationship does the prison have with the locals around it? Do locals feel safe? Is there any dialogue between them? Are locals going to have an issue with the fact that it is a prison and there's prisoners behind those walls? Or is it just that it's going to be a bit of an eyesore of a building instead of a green and pleasant field?
Well, I think you know, you have to look at each individual prison and who's the governor in charge. I mean, you know, I spent 16 years at Wormwood Scrubs, and Wormwood Scrubs in the heart of London. We were surrounded by houses and a hospital next door, and we had no issues. If you look at somewhere like Whitemoor's out in the Fens near March in Cambridge, and it has brought much prosperity to March. You know, pubs have opened instead of shut in. Houses have been built because of the need for staff housing, and so the economy has grown. So, you know, there are pluses and negatives on either side, but certainly I wouldn't be worried about living next door to one because people would be safe.
Well, Vanessa Frake, thank you very much indeed. Retired prison governor, always great to talk to you about these sorts of things. But it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because on the one hand, we can never get anything built in this country because there's always objections at the local level. And there's a lot of people who don't want anything built, whether it's housing, whether it's a reservoir, whether it's a prison, whatever it is. But also, I don't like the idea that because of incompetence in our government and the fact that our, you know, prisons are overflowing and all of this, that people are going to be forced to have a prison right next to them. But hey, that's the way it's going, I think.
And it's for delays with the planning as well. I think that really frustrates people a lot of the time. And as you say, lots of people would say we need more houses, we need more prison spaces. So
Wonderful.
What can they do?
This is Good Afternoon Britain. It would be nice if people just didn't commit so many crimes, wouldn't it? Anyway, lots more coming up on today's show. We will be back at the farmers' protest. Here we're looking at some live pictures there. We've got big tractors descending on the Capitol in Whitehall. Lots of music playing, I think, including Crazy Frog. We'll be there next.
Good afternoon. It's 2:33. I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines. Sarah Sharif's father and stepmother have been found guilty of murdering the 10-year-old before fleeing to Pakistan. The Old Bailey heard how Sarah was hooded, tied up, beaten with a cricket bat, burnt with an iron and even bitten in a brutal campaign of abuse in the weeks before her death on the 8th of August last year. Her body was found 2 days later in a bunk bed at her home in Surrey after her 42-year-old father, Irfan Sharif, called police from Pakistan, where he had fled with her stepmother, Bainash Batul, and the rest of his family. Her uncle, Faisal Malik, who's 29, is found not guilty of murder, but guilty of causing or allowing the death of a child. Hundreds of farmers have descended on Westminster with their tractors today as the government insists its support for the sector is steadfast. Last month, over 13,000 people rallied against the changes to inheritance tax. But despite the protests, the government says they will not change course on the policy. Today, farmers are warning the proposed changes could kill British farming.
This is the death of farming that's going to happen under this government. So we want to mark that. But once we get to Parliament, you give them what for. We're here to make a noise. This is a war we will win, and the government will do a U-turn. That is determined by all of us to push that.
A ban on puberty blockers for children with gender dysphoria in the UK is to be made indefinite after experts warned of an unacceptable safety risk. The government said that following official advice from medical experts, existing emergency measures banning the sale and supply of the drugs outside of clinical trials will stay in place. Health and Social Care Secretary Wes Streeting said there is a need to act with caution and follow the expert advice in caring for this vulnerable group of young people. An 18-year-old man has been sentenced to 1 year in a Dubai jail for having a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old girl. That's according to a campaign group. Marcus Fakana from Tottenham was with his parents in Dubai in August when a holiday romance blossomed with another Londoner who has since turned 18. After returning home and seeing pictures and chats, the girl's mother reported the relationship to Dubai police, who then arrested Fakana at his hotel. Sex with another person aged under 18 is illegal in Dubai. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Sam Francis has more in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's another dry but rather cloudy day for many of us. Brightest skies will be in the north with some decent sunshine for parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland, although here some lingering fog into the afternoon because that's where this centre of high pressure remains, and we've got light winds and actually relatively cold conditions throughout. Some frost remaining into the afternoon as well as those lingering fog patches. Otherwise, it's sunny skies for much of Scotland, cloudier for England, Wales, and a bit more cloud for Northern Ireland compared with the last few days, where we've got the cloud 6 to 8 Celsius. Where we've got the lingering fog, temperatures could remain below freezing throughout the day, and then that fog tending to thicken once again overnight. But for much of England and Wales, it's a fine afternoon, albeit rather cloudy. There'll be some light showers coming into the south coast, otherwise dry for the vast majority. A few sunny spells appearing into North Wales and staying clear here into the evening and overnight, but the clearest skies will be once again across much of Scotland, hence the relatively low temperatures as the sun goes down. So frost and fog for much of Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well as northwest England and North Wales, but a lot of cloud, and there'll be increasing areas of cloud into the north and east of Scotland, the south of Scotland as well. Northern Ireland, much of England and Wales seeing the cloud lower overnight, and some drizzly rain will arrive into the east coast as the night progresses. So a chilly start to the day, but the coldest weather will be in the far north, where we've got clear skies overnight and some fog patches first thing. Otherwise, a lot of cloud and increasingly damp weather moving into the east of England and then pushing into the Midlands, central southern England, East Wales, and eventually northern England. Outbreaks of showery light rain, 8 to 10 Celsius in the south.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Jules Buckley. 2 lanes are coned off in Derbyshire on the northbound M1. So from the Tipshaft services up to junction 29 at Chesterfield and Mansfield, that's where the 2 lanes are closed in the roadworks, queuing back towards junction 28 for that vehicle fire, quite slow southbound as well. A lane closed either side of the M40 in Warwickshire, 15 to 16, so around Warwick and Henley and Arden. That's due to a collision. Queues in Oxfordshire, northbound A34. Now, if you're heading between the Marcham interchange and Abingdon North towards Oxford, a lane closure in place, a 5-mile queue there. There's a shed load of gravel. And Westminster and London Whitehall remains closed between Trafalgar Square and Parliament Square. That's due to a farmers' demonstration, causing queues to Millbank, Victoria Embankment and back through Trafalgar Square as well. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
OK, good afternoon, Britain. It's now 39 minutes past 2, and we're going to cross over to Martin Daubney in Westminster because his show's coming up at 3. Martin, what have you got in store for us?
Well, guys, just like your beautiful husband, Emily, I spent the last hour walking up and down Whitehall. Farmers giving me the horn, blasting my eardrums off. There's a carnival atmosphere out there for now, but I suspect that might change if they don't get a result today. I'll be joined by the farm protester organisers live in the studio. Secondly, a shocking new report out today shows that 2/3 of armed forces housing for families is infested with mould and it's been deemed unfit for purposes. Meanwhile, asylum seekers sit pretty in warm hotels. And another shocking report seen by GB News, the public sector has ballooned to £1.2 trillion. And the biggest boom, guess what? A 9-fold increase in the cost of immigration policing. And finally, I'll be joined by the slimmer of the year. She lost half her body weight. What's the secret? I need to know. It's Christmas. I'm piling on the pounds. That's all coming in 3 till 6.
Well, I hope it's not Ozempic, Martin. Otherwise, that's cheating. That's cheating. I hope it's hard graft. And lots of lettuce.
No, definitely not. OK, well, looking forward to your show, Martin. We'll be back with you shortly. And we'll be back with the farmers, actually, very shortly as well, back in Whitehall. But during Advent, as we count down to Christmas Day, we are hearing from church ministers across the country. Each day, they will have a special message for you to celebrate the festive season.
The GB News Advent Calendar, Day 11.
Hi, I'm Chris Tufnell. I'm the vicar of Uterbridge Parish Church near Sheffield. Do you know the story of the Christmas Day Truce 1914? It's very well known. British and German soldiers of the First World War climbed out of their trenches and began to exchange gifts of chocolates and cigarettes, even playing a game of football. It's well known, and rightly so, because what a beautiful thing it is for peace to be brought into a place of conflict and war. Of course, that was supposed to be the war to end all wars. That's what they called it, but we all know it wasn't. Human history is littered with conflict. And conflict isn't just something that happens between nations. It happens between colleagues, neighbours, friends and family members. It can even happen within us. At Christmas, we remember that Jesus came into the world to bring peace. Peace between humans, but also peace between humanity and God. In a sense, the birth of Jesus was the original Christmas Day truce. The invitation is for us to climb out of our trenches and enjoy with him the peace he offers. Happy Christmas.
Well, Rod's just got in touch and said how uplifting and helpful these Advent messages are. They really are. They are uplifting, aren't they? You can see more of them on gbnews.com/Advent. OK, well, let's move on.
Let's move on. Furious farmers have descended on Whitehall as protests continue over changes to the inheritance tax. Let's cross back to Westminster now, and Patrick can join us. Patrick, still a very noisy atmosphere?
Hello, everybody. Yes, OK, so we are here in Whitehall. This tractor protest is still going on, and it's showing no signs of stopping. They are rolling all the way back to Trafalgar Square. If we turn around, actually, we can even see there's some more there just by the House of Commons as well. They're in a big circuit and a big loop. So if you just come back to me here, we're going to see why some people are actually here today. Obviously, the inheritance tax issue is what they're here for. I'm just going to see if I can talk to this guy. No, come with me. Come with me. Here we are. There's an individual here. Now, with our farmers together is the slogan in that window here. We've got members of the public applauding the farmers as they go down the street. It's a real sight to behold this. They're saying no farmers, no food over there. These people here are complaining. They're saying that if they go out of business, their land will be bought up by massive corporations, and it will impact the future of the British countryside. Back British farms is the message here. So can I have a quick chat with you? Open your door. Open your door. Good lad. OK, mate, why are you here today? What's going on for you? Let me get in, actually. Hang on. Here we go. There we go. Right. Why are you here today, mate?
Support British farming. Inheritance tax needs to stop.
Well, and what's your message to Keir Starmer?
Stop the inheritance tax, back British farming.
Yeah. Okay, could you just explain to our viewers and our listeners how hard you work? You know, what is your kind of daily routine?
So we start 7:30, we go all the way till 9:30, non-stop, just helping, supporting British farmers, vegetables, dairy, all the sorts.
Putting food on the table. And do you feel as though that they're biting the hand that feeds them a bit here?
Yeah, we're not getting the support that's needed. Okay. We're supporting, trying to support everyone. We're not getting the support from the government.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, mate. And I'll pop down here now and just hopefully I don't stack it. Oh, there we go. Right, now I'll leave you there. Let's move along the line. We've got a Union Jack here. Come here, sir. Yes. Hello. Hello.
This is my friend.
Hello. You're live on GB News. Why are you here today?
Just a protest, basically, of the inheritance tax, which I think is absolutely ridiculous.
Okay.
The one thing I was just saying to my colleague earlier, that they're hoping to receive 500 million from the UK farmers, but they're giving away, I think it's 510 million to European farmers.
Yeah.
What the hell is all that about?
Absolutely.
And why are we even importing any European...
Would you be willing to go on strike if necessary?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah?
Definitely.
What kind of consequence will that have?
Well, it'll be a hit in the pocket financially, obviously, because if we don't sell goods, then obviously we'll get no return. The other thing that my friend's going to mention to you happened last night, that Rachel Reeves spent £600 on 2 folders. Yeah. Now, if that money was coming out of our own pocket, our own bank account, we should be spending £1,200 on 2 folders.
Well, this is it, exactly. You guys have to watch the pennies a bit more than some people in government. Thank you very much. OK, well, look, it's showing no signs of stopping here in Whitehall. It's back to you in the studio.
Well, Patrick, for bringing us that report. A huge number of people to speak to down there. Lots of anger. Good stuff. We're going to be joined now by former Labour aide Stella Santakitu. Stella, thank you very much for joining us. Watching Patrick there in Whitehall, huge numbers of protesters there, lots of farmers from all over the country. They're very angry.
They are very angry, and of course I support the right to protest, but on this case I think that there is quite a bit of fear-mongering going on, and I think that there is some kind of manipulation of public opinion going on, because the thing with this tax, a lot of people, everyone is paying tax. Everyone needs more support. But the reality is that less than 1% of the population owns half of England. 1 million acres in England are owned by just 20 dukes. And a quarter of all of our farmland is being owned by 2,500 aristocrats. Frankly,
What's your point, Stella?
Support.
Stella, what's your point, Stella? Because looking at these, speaking to these farmers... Yeah, but speaking to these farmers, they're worried for the future of their farms. They want to pass on their farms so that their children or grandchildren can continue to farm that land for all of our benefit. What benefit is there in forcing them to pay tax and sell their assets in order to pay that tax so the farms get smaller and smaller and smaller?
You can make the same argument about any kind of business, any kind of property. What people want to see is they want millionaires, because that is what we are talking about. The tax threshold is £1 million. And most of these people will be, their farms will be costing at least £3 million.
Stella, they don't have that in cash. They don't have that in cash.
I understand that. But isn't it better that millionaires pay their fair share, and then the government can help, as they're already doing, by ingesting millions of pounds into rural communities so that they can actually survive, the ones that need that kind of help, and the farms that are needed in this country. If people like Jeremy Clarkson, if multimillionaires and aristocrats were paying the fair share of tax all of these years, then the UK would be in a much better position, and the government would not be needing to do the things that they have been doing. But because for the last 14 years, we have had a Conservative government which was not willing to make the very, very richest people in this society pay the fairest amount of tax. And this is why we are in the situation we are today.
Stella, just very, very briefly, what would you say to those small-time farmers who are just over that £1 million threshold, who have said to us here on GB News in the last 3 hours, every generation their farm and their assets is going to get smaller and smaller because of this inheritance tax rise?
It's not just the farmers that this has happened to. This has happened on multiple industries in the UK. And the reason why this has been happening is because the government has failed to invest appropriately throughout the UK on infrastructure, on schools, on anything else. And unless we tackle the economy as a whole, we are going to see the same thing happening to many more industries.
OK. Stella Santakitu, thank you very much indeed, former Labour advisor. I'm not sure it's wise to tell people that they're just sort of being manipulated into feeling angry about all this. I think the farmers know exactly what's going on in their farms better than most of us. Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Go on, Eamon.
Go on, Eamon. What does Eamon mean? I must admit, I never liked my name, ever. And then I realised that it's made me more individual because there are no other Eamons about. So therefore I can go by, whereas no one would know Isabel. She's Isabel Webster. She'd have two names.
But Isabel means something like delight.
But I was named after the TV presenter. My mother was in hospital, couldn't think of a name, and the TV presenter, Eamon Andrews, popped up on the television, and she said, "Oh, he's got hair like my Eamon." And she called me Eamon after him.
Oh, lovely. Oh,
that may have determined what I ended up doing.
My mum said if I was a boy, I would have been called Marius.
Marius?
Which I think is quite a weird choice.
It is a
Marius
weird
Webster.
one.
I'm forever grateful.
I'll say this, whatever you call a child, however weird or strange, whatever, the child becomes that name. So
Over half of us judge people instantly on their name. So we make assumptions on people based on their name. I'm not sure I do, but I mean, you mentioning you changing your name from an African name to a more anglicised name.
No doubt about that. So there's no doubt about that. Like, you know, if I'm on the blower, I sound like a London boy.
Yeah.
But I turn up as Keezy. Boy, mate, you don't belong around here.
Yeah.
That was what it was like 50 years ago. You know, now, I mean, and like even today. So sometimes today, like, I get some speaking engagements, and I will wear my traditional wear because, you know, I've accepted Keezy and my African heritage. And then the abuse you get on social media, you're not British, call yourself English, mate. No. You know, and you get all sorts of lyrics. So a name, when a name says your ancestry is from another part of the country, part of the world, it can be detrimental.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, should we have a look at what everyone's been saying?
Yes, and there's been a lot of views coming our way, so thank you. We've been talking about prisons today. Labour's plans to potentially build some super prisons in a town or village potentially near you, and forgetting about all the planning laws or what the local council thinks about it. Diane says, I would rather have a prison built in my area than have a migrants hotel open, because at least the prisoners are detained.
Right, well, Ted says I would prefer a prison built near me than a wind farm. Much more than a wind farm, so there you go. We could all play that game. What would you prefer a prison over? I'd prefer a prison over a primary school. They're far too loud in the courtyard.
And on that theme, Gareth says, would you sooner have these people on the street or in a secure building that happens to be nearby? So, yeah, but lots of views on that. Linda also saying, stop our taxpayers funding human rights lawyers, because we were talking earlier that there's a lot of foreign prisoners in prisons, and should we just deport them and then free up spaces for British criminals? And we had a prison governor on earlier saying that human rights lawyers can be quite successful in stopping these deportations. We did, and a lot of you are, well, very supportive of the farmers' protest, not so supportive of some of the comments that Stella made, particularly about the fact that we've all been manipulated. But we welcome all views here on GB News, of course, and thank you for joining us.
As ever.
We'll be back tomorrow on Good Afternoon Britain, and we're going to go to the weather very, very shortly. Lots more at Martin's with the farmers' protest.
We are indeed.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's another dry but rather cloudy day for many of us. Brightest skies will be in the north with some decent sunshine for parts of Northern Ireland and Scotland, although here some lingering fog into the afternoon because that's where this centre of high pressure remains, and we've got light winds and actually relatively cold conditions throughout. Some frost remaining into the afternoon as well as those lingering fog patches. Otherwise, it's sunny skies for much of Scotland, cloudier for England, Wales, and a bit more cloud for Northern Ireland compared with the last few days, where we've got the cloud 6 to 8 Celsius. Where we've got the lingering fog, temperatures could remain below freezing throughout the day, and then that fog tending to thicken once again overnight. But for much of England and Wales, it's a fine afternoon, albeit rather cloudy. There'll be some light showers coming into the south coast, otherwise dry for the vast majority. A few sunny spells appearing into North Wales and staying clear here into the evening and overnight, but the clearest skies will be once again across much of Scotland, hence the relatively low temperatures as the sun goes down. So frost and fog for much of Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well as northwest England and North Wales, but a lot of cloud, and there'll be increasing areas of cloud into the north and east of Scotland, the south of Scotland as well. Northern Ireland, much of England and Wales seeing the cloud lower overnight, and some drizzly rain will arrive into the east coast as the night progresses. So a chilly start to the day, but the coldest weather will be in the far north, where we've got clear skies overnight and some fog patches first thing. Otherwise, a lot of cloud and increasingly damp weather moving into the east of England and then pushing into the Midlands, central southern England, East Wales, and eventually northern England. Outbreaks of showery light rain, 8 to 10 Celsius in the south.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting a call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. Of course, we're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, farmers have descended on Westminster to continue their fight against the government's changes to their inheritance tax grab. But will the small farmers be heard, or will their cries for change fall on deaf ears? With the Assad regime in Syria toppled, the UK government is now concerned that new Islamic terrorist groups could now rise from the ashes of Syria. We'll have all the latest on the developments as the fighting continues. And military housing has reached a new low, with MPs warning our armed forces and their families now live in accommodation that's no longer